Is the grapevine saying.
Yep. So KRA has slapped you with a bill of X amount of money that you still have unpaid taxes. And because
you like
of that,
CT?
No.
KRA has gone
Laughter
ahead.
doesn't mean I'm happy. Laughter probably means I'm scared. KRA can just close your account. Whoop.
Yep, just like that. And then these are specific senators who, are saying, others have been told, you took a trip and you haven't fully accounted for that trip. So for that reason, we need to surcharge you. Account frozen.
But what is being imputed, what is being suggested is actually happening because the account frozen, established. But inasemekana nini imefanyika?
Wamekataa kutoa the line. Formula.
This is where sometimes
Senate, formula. Remember even when Sakaja was arrested, he tried to go the same route.
He did try, but he did a really lovely about turn, apologized, parted ways with the drama, and we've now forgotten about that little saga. Have we not?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are more important sagas to focus on. But are we saying, therefore, that because these gentlemen also happened to be people who had a view that other people think were not favorable at the moment, that this issue of the account closure or blocked or whatever terminology we wish to use has everything to do with their position in Senate? Is that the really reason? Is that the only reason that we can actually proffer?
What they're finding is the curious coincidence.
It may not be curious.
At this point in time, when you're doing this, this particular action happens. So they're like, Kenya tumeishi Kenya miaka mingi.
By the way, how long have they had been in this particular position? How long have these particular senators held this view?
Other attempts have been made. You've tried one route, you've tried sitting down with them, cajoling them, trailing them. They're not getting the message. Yes, called scaling up.
I listened to what Senator Sakaja had to say regarding him being followed. Fine. He was followed according to him, all right? These senators are telling us the accounts have been frozen because of a certain position they have taken. A little more proof is required before I believe that one.
That this is
That
the
this
reason.
is the reason why.
Yeah, there are many other reasons why your account can be frozen.
And is it all senators whose accounts have been frozen?
No.
Senators leading in a particular direction.
Specific
when it
senators.
comes, this is a thing. So that's why now you go towards that assumption. Specific senators who are
It's the timing, City.
voting a certain way. It's the timing. The timing is crucial when you look at something like this.
Everything.
It says a lot.
Fact of the matter is that the state has, every time I look, when there was a purge on Tanga, what happened? Files being opened. People being called and being told, unajua tuko na file yako hapa.
That file wasn't opened then. That file may probably have existed.
So they just call you and tell you.
It was not just being reviewed.
Unajua tuko na file yako hapa, imeletwa hapa kwa meza. The next thing, you are not going to appear in the next rally.
You know something? One of the things that keeps coming up in our conversation is how it is politicians behave, okay? And if there is an element of disbelief in my voice, the element is real, it is true. I don't believe that what is being presented is the only story. There are other stories. That could explain this very, very same thing. Yes.
Yeah, like just finally the government doing its work.
Finally, the government doing its work.
Okay. You have a lot of faith.
It isn't so much faith, Eric.
You are a man of faith. Or is it called lived experience? You have seen this before.
You know something?
Yeah.
There's what the politicians like bringing to the public domain is something that can best be described as a crisis experience. We had a crisis. Because of the crisis, I stood my ground. And because of that, this has happened to me.
Yeah.
Cause effect.
Yes.
It's always there.
Yes.
So even if this is true, the number of times, and not these particular politicians, but others who have represented them in Crying Wolf, it makes it very difficult to believe anything that comes out of their mouth as what you hear is it. You have to say, no, wait. let's pause and ask a few more questions before we
Before
go
we
down,
just
before,
go-
before we go down that road.
Before we go down that road.
Yes, it may very well be what they're saying, but until I have other facts come home,
You won't buy. You're not boarding.
man, KRA are not mad.
No?
KRA,
They're not mad.
I don't
Believe
know about
me.
the sanity of KRA. Let's start talking about the health of the country. COVID-19, we are fighting COVID-19. How are we doing?
Well, 650 more positive cases in Kenya, taking the number to 28,754. These tests were drawn from a pool of 6,768 infections around the world. So now we're at 21 million. 21,091,079 cases with 753,479 deaths. So the deaths continue to rise. The US now 5,415,666. India is one to watch. The cases are surging here, as are the deaths. Now India is at 2,459,613. Yesterday, when we looked at these numbers for India, we're at 2,248,000. So in 24 hours, India has recorded almost 20,000 cases in the last 36 hours. And unfortunately, the deaths have risen to 48,144. Many news outlets yesterday talking about the fact that India might not be able to deal with this. Of course, a lot of people have seen this. A lot, in terms of comments, has seen this as alarmist. But the surge which the Indian government reported...
What is the Indian government saying? Is the Indian government sounding alarmed?
The Indian government is not sounding alarmed. They are saying that they are testing also. However, even though they are testing, that they've seen very many cases of community transmissions that they were not seeing in the last couple of weeks. So it'd be interesting to watch what this. We must also remember that this is against a population of 1.3 billion people.
Yep.
So still quite quite below 5%. So that's what we're looking at now. But the problem is the rate at which the new cases are rising. That's what they're looking at. The South American countries, of course, still continue to suffer from the hits. And Mexico, again, in the news yesterday, 7,371 cases in the last 24 hours with 627 deaths. And you just look at these other countries, Bolivia, Belgium also is recording some more cases, 544 cases in the last 24 hours and 16 deaths. Belgium, which also had seen that they had gone, and done a little bit better, but the cases are rising again. Okay, so this is what we see. Still cases continue to rise. It's still an issue. And still governments asking for what you can do, which is, yes, wear your mask, wash your hands, and maintain social distance.
So the Americans have still not reached their peak.
No, now 16 weeks after they said they would. 16
But
weeks
let me ask this
after.
question. What is it that significantly demarcates this so-called peak? Because if I look at the ever-rising number of COVID infections, then I would argue that every week there's a peak.
This is true. But unfortunately, what has happened here is that the determination...
I think it's that point where you get in the peak and then the numbers start dropping.
The determination has been just that we've never reached a number as high as this, and
Okay,
thereafter it starts to drop. But
How high
unfortunately,
must it be for it
this
to
is the
be
thing.
high?
This is the
It doesn't
thing.
matter.
It doesn't matter.
It just needs to start dropping.
It could be 6,000 today and then 4,000 tomorrow. Then you say you reached your peak last week on Monday. But what we've seen, unfortunately, is that the numbers in the US, for example, have never dropped. If anything,
but then
they've
is it
continued
really
to
a
rise.
peak? You see, the thing is, once you have that seesaw, up and down, it's not a peak, it's many peaks.
It is many peaks. Whereas, you vis-a-vis other countries that reached a peak and then they started to drop. Case in point, Italy, Spain, the United Kingdom, where they have never gone back to the highest numbers that they saw.
Yeah.
When at one time, Spain was recording not less than 8,000 cases in a day. 6,000 cases in a day. But now we see Spain where they were third in the world at one point, having dropped now to number 10. And if you look at what cases they've been able to record over the last, 1 week, for example, it's lower than it has ever been. If we look at Italy at some point was number 3. And now Italy has dropped to has dropped to number 17. So they've never gone beyond the number where they were at number 3 in the world. It has never happened that they've gone. So they hit their peak, and then the numbers started to drop.
See, that is a peak. But there's a different conversation I was reading about in the Telegraph, the UK Telegraph. And the conversation was how some writer, this was actually an article by the editor, gentleman by the name of Chris Evans, which appeared in yesterday's Telegraph, how they feel that their government bungled this whole COVID affair. And they said that what they're facing right now is the worst economic crisis that this country, probably the worst this country has ever seen. And they're comparing it to Sweden. They said, Sweden, yes, has had infections, but mortality rate has not been alarmingly high. But what is significant is that Sweden's economy has remained stable. So his argument was that.
So what actions did the government of Sweden take that the government of the UK did not take, or vice versa?
Sweden seemed to have taken the view that this idea of herd mentality should be put into operation and allowed to flourish. Yes.
There's a difference between the there's the governments and then there's the people themselves. So yes, it was flourishing, but were the people observing some basic
yes, they were.
protocols?
Yes, they were.
Now compare that with the UK.
This thing, right now as you speak, how many Britons do you think left their country to go to Spain or France for holiday? In those extremely crowded beaches.
Yep.
You don't hear of similar stories in Sweden.
We don't.
Or some of those Nordic countries, they don't. So one could argue they have the people themselves, and Eric, you're right, have a completely different take on this, meaning they have evolved and understood personal responsibility in these matters.
They take it so seriously.
Because their school systems haven't had the same catastrophe that other school systems have had in the world. No.
I know somebody who has been to Finland. Actually, they are now in Finland, left Kenya a couple of weeks back. And I was saying, so the communication that you get even before you leave to go to Finland is when you arrive, get to the airport, you are not going to use public transport because you're coming from a country that still continues to have cases of COVID-19.
Yes.
We expect you to go and quarantine yourself for 21 days, and we expect you to then report to your local officials there, and then you start observing the measures. And there was no issue of, as you're arriving at the airport, you need to see your COVID negative certificate.
Nope.
No. It's just like, you know what you're expected to do, right? Come in, get here.
Take a taxi.
Or self-drive.
Go home.
Stay there for 21 days. Not 14, 21. And in case you feel anything, this is what you do.
Call so and so.
Call this, call the other. Healthcare is free. It's accessible.
Well, then it's
and
clear
the people observe that. And he says, as he's observing people around, basically, you can see people are moving around, they're going to the shops, but they know they're observing distance, they are not shaking hands.
But then it's clear that kind of behavior was not born because of COVID.
No.
This is a way of life.
No.
This is how government and people coexist.
Yep.
It's clear that it's a system, it's a way of doing things, and everybody is expected to, and you know what you're supposed to do. Which is why in some of these countries also, even the constitution cannot force you to do anything, because there's already the understanding that people understand personal responsibility, number one.
Yeah.
Government also understands and practices its responsibility and expectations of the people. It's clear.
And doesn't go about infringing on your rights.
Yep.
No.
It's
so
clear.
they don't even demand, they suggest.
They just tell you.
They give you information.
And it's a country where somebody willingly pays 60% of their income as tax.
Because they know that tomorrow, after you've made this payment, for example, that there's certain things that are expected of the government to do with these funds, and it actually happens.
And the government has a lovely track record of having done the things they say they were going to do.
Yeah.
So no one kicks a fuss.
18 minutes after 6, it's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. The live stream is up, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. Let's look at what's happening in our skies, and then we start to take a look at the big headlines of the day.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
It's mostly cloudy this morning in Nairobi at 15 degrees. There is a chance of rain. It's likely that the moisture will drop down later with highs of 23 and lows of 13. Thunderstorms are in the forecast for this afternoon. Cloudy conditions in Nyeri. We'll see thunderstorms later with highs of 21 and lows of 13. Nakuru is 14 degrees and mostly cloudy this morning. Chances of rain also quite high here with highs of 22 and lows of 13. It's mostly cloudy in Eldoret and we will see thunderstorms there. 19 the high and lows of 12. It looks like it's going to be a rainy day into a rainy weekend for most parts of the country because Kisumu is also recording high temperatures at 27 degrees and lows of 19. However, it's going to be a rainy weekend there, as is in Kakamega, but for now it's holding at 16 degrees. We'll see highs of 24 and lows of 15. Partly cloudy conditions in Malindi we'll see through to Saturday with highs of 28 and lows of 23 today. In Mombasa, clear skies with periodic clouds at 22, highs of 28 and lows of 21 today. Let's take a look into Kampala where it's cloudy at 19. Also, the forecast here sees thunderstorms with highs of 26 and lows of 19. We're going to reach a high of 31 in Dar es Salaam. Currently at 20 degrees, clear skies is what the town is experiencing. And it's 6 degrees with clear skies and sunny conditions forecasted for Johannesburg today. Highs of 19 and lows of 6. Rainy conditions are going to see Lagos into the weekend. Highs of 27 and lows of 23. It's mostly cloudy in Paris. At 20 degrees, there's a chance of a sprinkle later. The thunderstorm warning is at yellow, so there's likelihood of that this weekend with highs of 27 and lows of 17. Cloudy conditions in London, we'll see into thunderstorms, highs of 25 and lows of 18. And finally, in New York, it's still Thursday night, but it's 25 degrees and it's a warm night, getting into an even warmer day, where you'll see highs of 27 and lows of 23.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Let's start with a big proverb.
I suspect that you are referring to me, Eric. And since you are referring to me,
Wow.
Yes.
all right. No matter how tall a tree might grow, it will shed its leaves on the ground. no matter how tall a tree may grow, it will shed its leaves
on the ground.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Where is this from?
This is a week for African proverbs. Next week, we'll be more specific as to where
they
and which
come
part
from.
of Africa they come from. This was African proverbs.
One of these weeks, just let's do a tour around Kenya.
Oh, yes, we are. In fact, instead of doing the African thing, I'll do the Kenyan thing next week.
Next week, eh?
It should be fun.
That should be fun, right? So let's look at the big headlines today. Ndu.
Okay, so it's a small headline on the front page of the Standard. A county where women MCAs are spectators.
Okay.
So, for the last 3 years, nominated female members of Kisii County Assembly have been fighting for their space in vain from missing personnel emolument, thank you, funds for being kept away from sectoral committee leadership. The MCAs have accused the Assembly of malice. County Assembly Clerk James Nyaga and Speaker David Combo are on the spot for ignoring advisories issued by Commission and Revenue Allocation on implementation of budgetary provisions. The CRA, in a circular dated the 3rd of August and signed by Commission CEO Moses Che, clarified that the ceilings provided for personal emoluments for 3 ward staff, operations and maintenance costs for officers of elected and nominated MCAs. A week ago, County Assembly's Forum Chair Ndegwa Ohome and their officials visited Kisii Assembly and met Speaker Combo to deliberate on the issues. Now, the women are accusing the Assembly leadership of discrimination. Kisii, with 45 elected and 24 nominated MCAs, had a ceiling of 6.2 million in the financial year, which was to cater for 207 staff. However, 22 female nominated MCAs have not received vote line on county operations in the financial years 2017-2018, 2018-2019, and 2019-2020. The Commission wrote to all county assemblies on the matter, saying the running expenses, including rent for the offices, is provided for under the operations and maintenance budget. But the women are saying that it is clear that they are seen as spectators and they don't receive and are denied these funds, and they've been locked out of the committees of leadership.
So they don't have PAs.
They're not given these funds.
They don't have money
they're not given
to hire PAs.
They can't hire.
And such.
Only one nominated MCA, Eric Jaganya, has been allowed to chair the Roads Committee. No female MCA has been appointed to the 23 Assembly committees. Only 2 female MCAs, Nora Onyancha and Naomi Ronald, have been allowed as vice chairperson in House committees. 22 female nominated MCAs do not get their personal emolument funds.
Hey.
It's a problem.
It's a big issue. I see even the Commission on Gender and Equality has already written to them as well. This is, so basically they're considered flower girls.
Ouch.
Long and short of it. Just because you were nominated to fill a gap, the gender gap. And this is where I have problems with the nomination. So the mindset is, you know what? So people of Kisii went and elected their MCAs, and then the Constitution mandates us to have at least a third coming from one gender. So they were nominated.
Fill in the gap.
22 are nominated just to fill in the gap. So the management of this county basically just looks at them as, you are here just to...
That is certainly one view, Eric, but what about the view that these people already have views that are not very gender-friendly or female gender-friendly?
There is a direct yes.
Yes, and that it's now coming out that this is simply bringing out a perspective or a view towards women that has existed before. Because this is clearly a male-dominated assembly.
Also, it just not just the male leadership in the assembly. Yeah, it's also the people.
Why do you say the people, Eric?
Because they elected men to their county assembly.
Yes.
The women were only nominated because of a constitutional requirement.
Do we have knowledge as to whether there were women who actually presented themselves for this electoral process?
For elections in Kisii, we don't know.
I'm sure there will be.
I'm sure there were. But still, the decision was made and men are the ones who took those seats. And, even things like now, So it's almost as like you say, it's like you make up the picture, but in terms of the wedding, you're not the bride and neither are you the groom. So even things like these emolument funds that we're talking about, nobody's really going to give you any kind of priority. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, nobody's pushing for you, that kind of thing. It just goes to show the general attitude, I think.
It's a big attitude because, as you can see, the Speakers Forum are here, the MCAs Forum are here, the Gender and Equality Commission is in this conversation, the CRA is in this conversation, and yet the leadership is not feeling moved.
At all.
It's because it's not feeling that there's going to be any pressure from the people. There's no pressure from any other quarters. There's no pressure from the senator for Kisii. There's no pressure from the governor for. There's no pressure from any other quarters.
I dare even say that this letter that was written to them by the Gender Commission didn't really move anybody in any way, shape, or form. Right? Don't right. It's an issue, though. This whole thing, and we hear, and you know, we still have the conversations going on now from the chair of the LSK pushing for the dissolution of Parliament on the fact that there's no representation. Then there's not proper representation. Then when it comes to gender, as is required by the Constitution. So they're pushing for that. So these conversations continue to take place around the country. I mean, and here's another one where you're filling the gaps because you're required to, not necessarily because you see that, you know, a position can actually be filled or even the job done by a woman or any other gender.
You know, the problem here is the misogynistic perspective that is actually having light, on which light is being shone. That to me is what is worrying, because it has come out in this particular part of the country, but I could argue that it's the same problem we have in Parliament.
Oh, for sure.
The standoff.
Yeah.
The fact that there has never been any bill that has come and won the favor of all members of Parliament on how to come up with a formula, because this is what's expected.
And look at the reasons why they were not able to meet. There was no forum, lack of quorum. It's almost as if you make a decision, you make a deliberate decision not to come and have this conversation because it's misogynist in nature.
And
you
there
really
is no
don't.
pressure from
What conversation
outside.
are we even having?
When the MPs go back home to their constituencies, nobody's putting the pressure on them, piling pressure on them and telling them, look, you guys, it's now 10 years since this constitution was promulgated.
That
we have never had anything from you
It's not
with
priority.
regards to formula as you expected to do.
It's a bit of a damper when you think about it, because then it means that all these things we keep talking about, thinking we've made headway, we've made progress in certain ways.
we are far.
What you've done, you're trying to fill a
We
bucket
are
from the
far.
ocean. And what has happened right now is that a tablespoon has been taken from the ocean and put into the bucket. And by the time you walk from your village back to the ocean to get another tablespoon.
And you're the only one.
Yeah, it's
You're
just
the
you with
only
the
one
spoon.
who's doing this with
It's
a
just
spoon.
you with the spoon.
Yeah. It's a societal problem. It's a societal issue.
And it's an attitude. Yeah.
It's an attitude issue. This will not elicit any more.
I'm telling you that
reaction.
letter that was written
By
by the
Monday,
commission
this
is already
thing is over.
gathering dust.
Commission, NRA.
Well, this is where all these NGOs and all these civil society groups that deal with such matters, well, now they have their work cut out for them. Because this one certainly requires attention.
Yep. It tells you that even that fight, I think, like we talk about the people who are fighting for gender equality in the years gone by, they reached a point and they were expecting that others would take up this fight, and we don't see a new crop or new breed of people who are pushing for the same as loudly as we saw earlier. 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Time to look at what's happening on the roads. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
It's Friday
Traffic.
morning and we're hoping that it doesn't look too crazy. So far, so good. Coming off of Mombasa Road already, we have a little bit of traffic right around Cabanas, but that's normal as everybody's trying to connect from different parts of the city. It should be fine as you get to General Motors and then out towards Bellevue on Mombasa Road, getting to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout and then onto Huru Highway. This morning, it doesn't promise anything crazy, but we're going to have to wait and see how that opens up. Of course, they say the early bird catches the worm. In this case, the early bird catches the road. Coming off of Thika Road, getting into the CBD also is not too painful at the moment. Service lanes are up and can be used as the major highway as well. Not too much traffic. Kiambu Road looks like it might be a little bit of something, but we're going to keep an eye on that and look at it. But for now, it looks pretty good. Okay. Everywhere else looks like it's all right. Coming off the 87 in Westlands and into Westlands roundabout, joining me then with James Gishuru. Looks like it will be all right too. So good tidings is what we wish you this Friday morning in traffic. We're going to keep an eye though. You help us too. Spice of MKE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
24 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's continue taking a look at the big headlines of the day. There's this one here, which is on the Standard. It's talking about the irony of COVID-19 billions that are lying idle. Basically, this was a presentation by National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani, who told the National Assembly Committee on Health that the government has so far received 134 billion shillings from bilateral and multilateral partners to fight the pandemic. But also he said, remember that COVID-19 Harambee Fund? It's called the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund. It has so far raised 9.9 billion shillings, which has not been utilized to date, according to the CS.
What about that money that they had earmarked for PPEs?
This is where the confusion, you see?
Huh?
You're confused, right?
Yeah.
Ukur Yatani is saying that the emergency fund was established by the president. Okay, yeah, that we know. He says they have not utilized that 9.9
Utilized or have
billion
not
shillings.
utilized fully?
So the money that they were then using for PPEs.
There was PPEs. There was a trial distribution, some trial cash transfer program that was done.
Some 700 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take you somewhere. Look at The Nation, page 15. There is an article there that has been published. It's written by one of the board members, and this is the KCB CEO, Joshua Oigara. Right? You seen it?
I'm looking at it.
So Joshua Oigara is talking about, okay, so the fund has been here. We have been working hard. We have, worked to cushion people. And in fact, because he talks about the committee that he chairs, the subcommittee of that fund that he chairs, which is looking at the vulnerable people. He says they have distributed some cash to people.
Yes, 400 million pilot program that reached 100,000 beneficiaries is in formal settlements, Nairobi County. And they each received 4,000 shillings each.
There you go.
Okay, there's so many of these things.
So he is already saying that we have spent some money. We have also seen, covered in the papers and even in the media, that the fund has gone to inspect some of these companies that are making PPEs because they've been contracted by the fund to make PPEs.
Yes.
And then we've also seen them delivering the PPEs to Kenyatta National Hospital and other
And we've
hospitals.
also heard complaints that some of those PPEs do not meet
The required standard.
Yes. So
what is the story
Which is
here?
which?
Which is which?
is
Unless
very
the
confusing.
person who's written this story did not completely understand what the CS was saying.
Let's hope that is the unless. And because we also know that public hospitals will now charge you for this protective gear. Okay? That is also coming
meaning
out today.
your costs will include the usage of protective gear.
Which the government is supposed to have procured. That
For
means
free.
that if they have procured it, then it should be dispensed for free. So there's a lot of confusion here in terms of what's going on. And I think it was clear that we were told that this is what was going to happen.
By the way, just so that you understand, and in case you thought it was safe to get out of the water, this 1,000 shillings that the government has been giving to the very same vulnerable group of people, well, it is set to end in October.
Okay.
Yes, just so that you know. It isn't going to
The 1,000 bob that they receive on Tuesdays.
Yeah, that one.
October.
End of October.
Okay.
So we assume that by October, you will no longer be vulnerable.
You move out of vulnerability.
Yep.
Why? Because of budget. That's how much it had been budgeted, and it obviously was going to. Just like the 10 billion shillings for Kazim Tahani. At some point, it's a 6-month program.
They targeted individuals who are vulnerable over a certain period of time, given the budget that they had.
Yeah.
So this just tells you that the money that they had set aside for this is going to come to an end.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll have those people who will no longer be able to receive some money. We have the elderly people whose 10 billion shillings was already sent to them. They received 8,000 bob. It's over. We have the Kazim Tahani that's already now in its, is it second or third month? It'll have like 4 more months or so. By end of year, even that will come to an end. Then we'll have fresh problems next year because more people again.
Actually, we already have problems because even when you're talking about the vulnerable, remember, there's always been news of people who are vulnerable or who are reported as being vulnerable who have not benefited from this.
Who are not in this bracket.
Yes. And there are those who've also said, talk to us about having applied as was required or as was told to them. And yet, despite all this, they have not received. So it isn't as though the problems that had been reduced will simply catch up with the problems that were never resolved in the first place.
Wow. The issue of payment in hospitals, actually, this is not the first time. We've seen people complaining from many of these hospitals in the counties that, yes, they went there, they were treated, they were in isolation, they were receiving some treatment, and they were given a bill. Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital still has a number of cases where we hear
this reminds me of a hangover of something that was began in the Moi era called cost sharing.
Yeah.
Why it was new is because prior to that, government hospitals were free. As in free. You walk in, it's free. You get treated free. Then they looked and said, doesn't quite work. A little contribution from you would be useful. Now, again, when you talk about money being paid to hospital, one of the things that isn't always clear is who this money goes to. 1, 2, what it actually does. And one never really asks for evidence as to when they say something is done, whether this thing that they say was done is actually done. Yes. Yeah. So there are all these issues that keep coming up. But at a time like this, when someone is telling you that the monies that you've been receiving to cushion you are going to actually come to an end, and then alongside that same statement, we read about charges now being preferred in government hospitals.
Yep.
Yay.
Yep. Because the government does not have money. Right? It's a finite resource, right? So it's come to an end. But however, there's going to be money for a referendum.
Yes, because Raila says to Ruto, you are deep state and system. ODM leader Raila Odinga has turned the heat on Deputy President William Ruto over claims that the deep state was plotting his political downfall. Raila yesterday said Ruto had inside knowledge of who the deep state he has been referring to. He said the system the DP accuses of plotting his political downfall is not a faceless entity, and if there was anyone who would know about it, it would be Ruto. So this was a little part of that conversation where he had and was telling Kenyans basically before he went into this that there will be a referendum. And a lot of people have been complaining that there's no money for a referendum. And he went on to give the example of how to vote in the United States, it's 50 cents per voter. So it was possible to have an entire election for about 1 billion shillings.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in Kenya, 40 billion shillings is spent. It is possible to do it for much less, number one. So if that is possible, then it is also possible to have a referendum. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So a referendum will be had in Kenya.
This year.
There is money to have it. So all these things you're talking about, Eric, about how there's no money.
You're going to pay for nothing.
There is money.
There's money.
Because a referendum can be had. So there can be money to do these other things.
You know, of interest, you know how it is, you open up a proverbial Pandora's box.
Yeah.
This is what was done yesterday.
Yes, it was done.
Yes,
This
it
mention
was.
of deep state, but just so that you understand that our deputy president isn't alone in this crying wolf, the US president is doing the same. Who would have thought that a Western country, the heart and soul of freedom, as they tout themselves, would have a president who would be telling us that he anticipates that his election is going to be rigged?
So therefore, it should be postponed.
Yes, this was our problem as third world banana republic types. Okay? But now we have a situation where the so-called first world is having similar problems. And it's like he is preparing himself should he lose the election.
You see?
Rigged.
You see?
Yeah. So our deputy president is in good company.
So there's no money to do these other things in the country.
But there'll be money for a referendum.
Yes, there
that one we are not negotiating, okay?
No,
Just
that one.
prepare. Chebukati, prepare. We will teach you how to do a referendum.
The problem is
We're doing the
reason
referendum.
why it has been so expensive in the past is because you, the IEBC, have not been able to get your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
So get your ducks
We will
in a row.
teach you how to
teach
do
you
it.
how to do this, and we will have a referendum.
And this whole thing of saying that you do it in 2022 with the
No.
other general election. No, the Kenyan voter is illiterate. You cannot add a seventh ballot. That's what Raila said. 14 minutes to 7
He actually
o'clock.
said they're illiterate.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep. 14 minutes to 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
take a quick break and then we'll come back and read this actual quote from Raila Odinga on the illiteracy of the Kenyan voter.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, so 12 minutes to 7. Have you seen that quote?
I have. in fact-
Attributed to
Well,
the ODM leader.
Why don't I just read it out and contextualize it?
Yeah.
We have been doing some overhaul, and Reggie will be back shortly. He asked independent IBC chairman Wafula. Lengthy.
Hey, tongue twisted. Before 7. Why?
Yeah, Chairman Wafula Chebukati to prepare for the vote. There's money, and we can teach Chebukati how to do it. We are going to do it. Then the plebiscite he added must be conducted before the 2022 election because voters should not be confused with many ballot papers. When there are 6 ballots, when there are 6 ballots and you want to add another one to illiterate voters, it will not work. He's not saying the voters are illiterate. Saying there are voters who happen to be illiterate. He's not saying the voters are illiterate. No.
The 6 ballots have not confused them. It's a 7th one that will confuse them.
I argue that even 6 is confusing. Now, if you had a 7th one, how confusing do you think this is going to be?
So
You only need to look at the number of spoiled votes we had in the last election.
Spoiled votes were
Aye, there were many.
They were equal to the number
There were
of votes
many.
that others got that put them in.
Yes,
could
there
put
were
them in
many. There were many. There were many. And yet, if you went to vote, what you found was the electoral officials were actually very helpful. They would show you, they would help you. They would. Our elections are never a problem. The actual voting, it is one of the most pleasant things you can actually go through in this country.
So what is it that then happens during that time when somebody enters that booth and they come up with something that has been wrongly marked for it to be declared a spoiled vote?
For instance, if you're told to take in a box, okay, and you put a cross on the person's face or the picture of the person, that's a spoiled vote.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
All right? If you take...
This is because this person did not know where to tick.
It appears so. They have an idea of what they should do, but it isn't what they should do. And yet there are people there to help you.
Also, I think there's a lot of... There's pressure. You've been on a queue and you're feeling like you're holding up the queue.
Yes.
And then there's that pressure of, oh my God, I need to do it fast. Because I do not believe that the number of spoiled votes are the same across the 6 ballots.
No.
So it would mean that if we had an illiterate Eric who went into that booth with 6 papers and he did not know what to do, then he'd do the wrong thing on all of them.
Yes.
If I did the right thing on 5 and then did the wrong thing on the 6th, it's not because of illiteracy. It's something else.
I go back to the publication and information that the central bank went into when they were introducing the new denomination, the new notes. All right? You cannot say you were not informed.
Yeah.
This issue of voter education, yes, there's some seriousness applied to it, but a little more seriousness could be applied to it, taking into account people who may not necessarily have the ability to understand some of these complexities of our voting system. If you actually tell people repeatedly what they ought to do, I'm sure they'll get to that ballot box and know what to do. And they will not take a ballot that is meant for the,
county
assembly and put it in that for the president. They will not make that mistake.
It's true. Plus, a chunk of all of these funds that we're talking about actually goes towards voter education. So you would think that this message would be repeated more often.
And I'm telling you guys, my feeling is it's not because the voter, by the time the voter is waking up in the morning,
know what they're doing.
They don't know what they're going to do. They know. They go, they get to the queue. They're told this stream is from A to J's, this stream is from M to whatever, and they go to the right queue. They know.
Eric,
they get to that point, they remove their ID. They knew that they were supposed to come with an ID. They know. They pick the 7. They know that they're supposed to go into that booth. They know. They do.
Eric, you may have a point.
There's something else here that is making
There's
somebody
a certain
do
level
the
of
wrong.
anxiety that voting brings along with it.
Yeah.
But remember, you form queues, but only a certain number of you allowed into the boothing, into the voting
booth
area.
Yeah.
Yes. So again, as you say, the pressure may be individual pressure, but then there's a little confusion here. I saw this with issues surrounding HIV. See, positive for us for the longest time has always been a good thing. So now when you introduce the concept of someone being positive and it meaning that the person is unwell, it took time for that to sink in. Said, somebody's happy. They've said I'm positive.
Yeah.
You say,
it's not a good thing, man.
Not really a good thing. So if you want people to vote and you tell them to tick or tell them to put a cross, you need to be clear here.
Yeah, tick or cross.
Yes, because if people are accustomed to ticking and you are not telling them to put a cross, you're going to have many spoiled
But ticking
votes.
was correct and a cross was
Exactly,
wrong.
exactly.
So, I mean...
So I like this person, tick.
Yeah.
And yet
I don't like everybody
and yet
else.
you've been told
I cross
to
everybody
cross.
else.
Across everybody else, spoiled.
But then again, you can. I think really at that moment, because like you said, you're prepared. You know what it is that you're going to do. You've been hearing all of this for the last 18 months, right? You know who you want to vote for. You know, because you know who's going to be on that ballot.
Yep.
You can liken it to somebody who's been rehearsing for this grand performance, and then when they get on stage, something grips them. Anxiety, nervousness sets in. I think
Stage
that's
fright.
the stage fright. Yeah, it happens.
Again, if I may refer to the President of the United States with regard to this voting via post that was... You see, if you read what is being said or is being reported as him having said, you'd think this is something that is new. It isn't new. A very significant percentage of votes in America have always been cast through this method. So it isn't as though they're inventing it.
Yep.
No, it's always been there. Now, there's a question of expanding it. Suddenly, it has issues. I think what we see here It's not that we are leading in something or that we have invented something that other people don't have, but understanding the anxiety that people have on voting day and why it is they have the anxiety. When my memory serves me right, the times I voted, it is one of the easiest, most pleasant days. And the conversation as we're queuing is the most interesting conversation you can have. And clearly, we are planning to vote differently. And we vote. Then.
All hell breaks loose.
Then.
Thereafter.
But if enough attention is actually paid to this issue, which is clearly coming up, and the spoiled vote should educate us to understanding that there is a certain level of understanding that has not actually been passed on to the voter, then maybe the IEBC should start this education earlier.
So the money should now be going to the IEBC to prepare us for 2022 instead of saying spend the money now.
Yes.
I would agree with that.
Yes.
Because by-elections don't have this percentage of spoiled votes.
No.
Because it's just one election. You're going into a by-election, you're choosing an
It's
MCA.
one person that you're selecting, not.
It's one seat. And you don't get this kind of confusion.
No, you don't.
Okay.
You know, anything that is online, and I'm talking online, is very, very confusing to people of a certain age. I belong to that bracket. And it isn't confusing that you don't understand the logic behind it. It's confusing because it's new. And why am I bringing this thing up? The issues around COVID, in my view, are problematic not because it is difficult to understand what COVID is, but it's forcing you to change, and we don't like change.
It's a bigger issue here.
Yes.
It's that forced to change. A couple of weeks back, we had a story from Nakuru about a landlord who had welded a tenant in. And that was one story. A similar story is in the papers today. A dispute over rent at Shaban Estate in Nakuru turned ugly after a landlord welded his tenant's door, trapping one occupant inside. This gentleman called Amon Onzare was alone in the house when the landlord struck. His mother had gone to hawk vegetables. He was speaking to a standard journalist through the window, and he said that the landlord welded the doors of the house on Thursday last week after his mother delayed to pay 10,000 shillings rent arrears. The landlord had asked Onzare to leave the house, but when it started raining, the gentleman went back into the house to seek shelter. While it was raining, the landlord brought a welding machine from a nearby garage and sealed the door. This gentleman called Onzare peeps through the window and tells the landlord, "Hey, bwana, niko hapa ndani, let me come out." Landlord says, No, I want to teach your mother a lesson to respect other people's property. Welded, left.
That one is not. It went beyond the money now.
Yep.
That one went beyond the money, and now this is just anger.
Tenant
Beyond.
plus neighbors go to police. When they went to the police station, Kaptembo police station, the officer said, that's a civil matter. It should be resolved by the tenant, the landlord, and the local administration. Police basically said, this one. And then you go and talk. And then you It took the intervention of what we would call the DO, the Nakuru Town West Deputy Commissioner Elma Shafi, who's the one who came to the rescue of the woman and her son.
You know, when we think and talk about impunity, we sometimes forget just how corrosive and how easy it spreads. Surely, if someone lives in your house and they haven't paid, what is it that drives you to think that the only way you get them to pay is if you weld them in?
That's what I'm telling you. It's beyond money. This one now was I want to teach you a lesson, which I think he actually said it. He actually said it because
you
really,
have to
if it was about the
other
money,
people's property.
Yeah, if it was about the money, then up and leave, and we'll get somebody else to come in and rent the place. But it wasn't about that. It was now that anger that you feel for whatever reason, frustration because you didn't get the money, certain things that you were not able to do. But then now to teach another human being a lesson is what was now the point of all
But
of
remember that one of the things that we have been facing in this country is the massive exodus of people from urban areas to the rural areas. So this issue of removing a tenant in the hope that you'll get another one may fall in the realm of wishful thinking.
Soon there'll be no more tenants.
Yeah, well, I don't think we'll get there, but there'll be a huge reduction in people who want to pay rent.
Coming up to the top of the hour, 7 o'clock. As we do that, CT Muga, remind us today's proverb.
Thank you very much, Eric. I will remind you of today's proverb by actually reading it to you. No matter how tall a tree might grow, it will shed its leaves on the ground.
This is one of those African sayings.
It's an African saying, just so that you can begin to figure out what this is all about. It doesn't matter whether the leaves are taken up by the wind and they seem to sort of like float away. They eventually will land on the ground.
That's it. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Much of traffic on the roads this morning. It is looking pretty good in all directions coming off of Mombasa Road. Let's look at where the visibility is rather low. We're looking at the Limuru Tigoni Road. We're also looking at headed towards and coming out of Kijabe. We're looking at Limuru Road now heading out of the city. Visibility is quite low, and we know it is a Friday, so quite a number of people traveling this morning, and that's why we see a bit of traffic as well. So there's going to be two things we're going to ask you to do. Try and be careful, and then also go as slowly as you can to avoid any kind of accidents this morning, because you can't see very well, right? Okay, so we're going to come back into the city and look at what it looks like in about half an hour or so. People seem to be moving a little bit more slowly this morning, getting ready for the weekend, I reckon. But it shouldn't be too bad from all indications. We're going to keep an eye on Mombasa Road and hope that doesn't get too crazy today, as it has throughout the week. Spice FMKE, you can let us know what you see.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way
Thank
to
you very
start
much
your
for tuning
day.
in to Spice FM. Welcome to The Situation Room, the second hour of the show. We broadcast in Nairobi on 94.4, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5, Kisumu, Eldoret 96.7, 96.0 in Nakuru and the environs, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7. Also live streaming on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. Today is the 14th day of August. Something happens every 14th day of the month.
Well, this
And
particular
this is
month,
an announcement that comes from the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority.
yes. We were told.
Eh.
We were told yesterday that today, the 14th,
Midnight.
petrol, diesel prices will rise. And we're even given the amounts. But
Who's telling us?
the cabinet secretary, no doubt,
Who?
the cabinet secretary in charge of this particular ministry, petroleum. This is the energy sector, my friend. But to understand this, we probably need to go further back into a little history and go to July the 10th, when very, very quietly, this particular ministry gazetted a notice which indicated that the petrol prices were going to, the fuel levy was going to be increased by 5 shillings and 40 cents. Now, the total amount that the government anticipates that they'll be collecting from motorists every month should be something like 2 billion shillings. Quietly. Remember, but they decided to couch it and give it a little cover and say, well, we want to ensure that we have a cushion to stabilize this particular sector of our economy in the event that fuel becomes volatile. Now, the volatility arises from two things. One, fuel prices probably going back to the prices that it were prior to COVID. It hasn't gotten there yet, but because there's an attempt to go back to normalcy, it means that the consumption of fuel is increasing around the world. The issues that China had, Saudi Arabia had, Russia had, those are things that have quietly sort of like been settled. So essentially that particular business is trying to steadily move and get back to its normal footing, but it's still far away. Remember, it had gone to a point where it was zero. You really couldn't put a price on crude because nobody was buying it. And people weren't buying it because there was no need for it because people weren't using it. But now that people are beginning to fly, people are beginning to use trains more often, meaning the public consumption of fuel is slowly waking up. Now, our energy sector has woken up fully. Them, they're not just, it's not the process. Them, they are fully awake. And they're fully awake to the fact that Kenyans love to drive. Kenyans need to use public transport. And now that we've also opened up our skies, we've opened up public transportation, they figured there was that little matter of the levy, that we understand, but there's a small matter of just the fuel, and we will increase petrol by, expected price should be 103, the change shillings per litre, 3.3 shillings up. Diesel, 94.44, expected price, make it 95 just so that you understand it, up by 2.79 shillings. Yes. So we seem to be back to where we've always been, a state where fuel prices always goes up. Yet, the regulators and those in charge keep telling us things that do not really seem to be in tandem with what they're doing.
How were they able to have a 23 shilling decrease in fuel prices during the pandemic? Well, it's not done, so it's still, the pandemic still is carrying on. So it's possible to have had this 23 shilling drop, and people were buying fuel in this country for 80 shillings, around about, whether it was petrol or diesel or whatever it was. It was possible for this to continue, and things did not fly out the window. And that is the question that, look, because let's get to the nitty-gritty of it. We can talk about the science and the drop and the world prices and how it's affected by the prices of crude, etc., etc. There's the regulatory authority in place, and regardless of, because of what they have predetermined prices will be, that's why you have this 14th at midnight every month. When the prices change, this happens. This could be circumvented by something like a pandemic. It was possible because the barrel went to negative numbers.
Yes.
Right?
It went below zero.
It went below zero. We have not seen that the barrel has gone back.
No. Far from it.
No, it's not at zero.
No. We're saying it
has gone
it
back
went
to
below,
where it was.
but it's recovered.
It has recovered, but it has not gone back to
what
where
it was
before.
No.
So how is it then that the price itself, and this is the thing that has to be made clear for Kenyans or all consumers of this, how is it that the price then has gone back to below zero barrel times, and this pandemic is still occurring, or we're still in the throes of this pandemic, and it is the reason as to why you could go below 80 shillings or just about 80 shillings? I don't
get your question at all.
How is it?
Do you understand how they arrive at the price every month? You see that statement from the ERC, right? It comes in, and the basis is the landed cost. That's the basis. The landed cost. If this month the landed cost is 10 bob, and the next month the landed cost is 15 bob, there's going to be a difference.
There will be that's clear.
In price, okay? And then now you bring in all the other levies, and that shoots it up again. And this is the reason why you see there's a rise.
Did all these levies not exist?
They were there, but you see, of course,
to make it go below the prices that it is now.
Of course, the levies were there. The point here is, at that point, was the landed cost the same as it is today? Of course not.
Exactly.
So the landed cost now is higher. Therefore, the price is definitely going to be higher today than it was 2 months ago.
Okay.
What's your question again?
My question is, the reason as to why it was able to go to that price was given that
the landed cost
had gone lower.
Yes.
So
the people who are importing the fuel into the country have bought it cheaply in the international market. It has arrived.
But they have to transport it.
They have transported. It arrives here. It's a lower cost than it was the previous month because of how much they bought it for and how much it has cost them to transport. So landed cost is lower in the month of April, for instance. And therefore, in that month, the following month, the price will drop, commensurate with that landed cost. The next month, if the price of the finished product that the importer is buying goes up, the landed cost is higher, their price will go up. Now, if the landed cost this month is declared to be, it was higher from the open tender system, the amount of
Meaning it moved from 34 shillings.
yeah, and now
40
now we
cents.
have bought it to we have bought it at 38 bob, so the price is expected to go up. The issue, however, is when fuel is arriving in Mombasa at 34 bob, you are buying it at 90 bob. What is that difference? That difference is government.
It's tax.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Actually, there's the CES, Mr. Kamau, the Petroleum Principal Secretary, said something very interesting. I want you to try and listen to it and tell me if you make sense of it. We could have hedged through an investment bank, but that means we will still pay even if the prices don't increase, just like insurance. We can adjust the levies accordingly and chip in with the fund or agree to pay a certain portion of the import bill with the marketers to reflect our desired pricing to the consumers.
So essentially, you can tinker with these things and make
What's
it the
the
cost that
context?
you want it to be.
What's the context of that? What is he saying?
This was.
You could hedge what?
This is now. I'm actually pegging it what you're saying. He was trying to explain the issues that one has to deal with when one is talking about these prices and the options that are available to you. Okay? So, this gobbledygook, this
Spit up.
is how a finance person perhaps would look at it. But I'm not even going to go there. When the cost of fuel goes up, the cost of everything else
it has a
goes up.
huge impact in the country.
That really is where the problem is. Everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. At a time when there's no money, at a time when people cannot say they can afford what they normally could afford, everything, literally everything goes up.
I think the questions that should be asked are, number one, these levies that the government charges. Okay. So initially, a couple of years back, the government decided to forego collection of VAT on petroleum products. Okay. So the entire 16% was brought to zero. Then there was a lot of pressure from all quarters, including the World Bank, and it was reintroduced. But then there was a lot of pushback as well from the citizens, including Parliament, and the government said, okay, so instead of going back to 16, let's go to 8%, sour. But then there are other levies.
Every time the
Road
government-
maintenance levy, there's all
Eric, anytime the government gives up on one levy, you can rest assured they
It's
are
gonna
going to raise
be
another levy.
many.
Maybe something else that you didn't know of. So essentially, you're probably better off just sticking with the 18% or 16% because when you reduce it to 8, they're going to throw in another 15 somewhere. And it won't come as 15, come as 5, 2, 3. When you do the maths,
It's crazy.
you're worse off. I do understand that the government needs to raise money. I understand that, but clearly, I do understand that. But surely, the government seems to think that we can grow this economy by taxing the living daylights out of its citizens.
Yeah.
Because, at every turn, for heaven's sake, literally every turn, you're talking about not breathing. This is it, really.
This is the one.
Yeah.
When you look at the prices that you actually buy this for and then what needs to then be paid to government, that's then now when you can take issue with this. And if you're going to put that against what world prices are and look at what other countries are then able to do, at the end of the day, what you buy this for is at the behest of the government, whichever way you want to look at it. If they made a decision, and if you're just listening to what he actually did say in that statement, that then they basically have the power to be able to tinker with this. And
They
say
do.
that, yes, they do. They can tinker with this. They can decide to reduce, to have a reduction here or there if they actually wanted to. But we also have to see that, it is a major source of revenue for government. Major source of revenue for them.
Yep.
Where are they going to get money as high as this consumed by so many at the same time?
You need to throw in, for instance, gas. It is a petroleum product. And many people use it. And then there's kerosene.
Yeah.
So it isn't just fuel that goes into your vehicle. No. There are all the other products that are also byproducts of this same crude oil. Now, what I find puzzling and what I find difficult to understand is when you talk about cushioning your citizenry and you keep increasing prices, what exactly are you talking about?
Yeah, the price keeps going up. I'm looking at last month's release from the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, which goes into great detail to explain how they arrive at the pricing. All right, so I'm going to read to you. In fact, they even give a comparative crude oil costs in the international market from July 2019 to June 2020 through the year. And you can see then there's an increase, there's a drop somewhere. And then there's something that we have also not mentioned, and this is the exchange rate. How much is the shilling going for now against the dollar?
What is it? I think the shilling, was it 107?
Yep. Now you can imagine. So when at some point when the shilling is 100 bob, and then the next time the shilling is 106,
It'll cost.
there's an increase in cost.
You will get less for your shilling.
Can you imagine? And then there's now the levies. In fact, where the levies are, that's where the main story would be. The levies and the taxes that have been introduced by the government, even in this new financial year. 16 minutes after 7, this is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at the skies, the weather, and then we continue the conversation. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather
not much
with
of a
Spice
change
FM.
in most of the skies as we see today. Let's look into Nairobi, where we're likely to see showers later on, but currently standing steady at 14 degrees, highs of 22 and lows of 13. And in Nyeri, it's cloudy at 14 degrees. We'll see highs of 21. In Nakuru, mostly cloudy conditions at 15, a chance of rain later with highs of 22. And in Eldoret, there's also a chance and thunderstorms being forecasted here with highs of 19, mostly cloudy at the moment. In Kisumu, 20 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 19 with a chance of rains later on. Kakamega is mostly cloudy at 17. We'll see highs of 24 with showers expected later. Malindi is cloudy and raining already. Highs of 28 today. And in Mombasa, it's mostly sunny, partly cloudy conditions for some parts of the morning with highs of 29. In Kampala, it's mostly cloudy. We'll see highs of 26 with showers expected later. And in Dar es Salaam, it's clear skies and sunny conditions at 20, highs of 31. In Johannesburg, it's a bit of a chilly morning at 6 degrees, highs of 19 with sunny conditions all through today. Lagos is looking at rains through the weekend, highs of 27 and lows of 23.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, it's 20 minutes after 7. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. I was telling you I'm going to read out just what the EPRA said last month when they were adjusting the prices. First, they explained the difference between the landed cost of the product in May and the landed cost in June. So in product, for example, a super petrol, a cubic meter of super petrol was $248.21. In June, that goes up to $279.58. That's a 12.6% rise. Diesel went up by 32%, and kerosene was unchanged for the month. So the price then goes up by that kind of margin as well around the country.
It does, but do we buy crude? Do we buy it as a retail product, or how do we buy it?
Now this is the landed cost. The landed cost is not as crude; it comes as
fuel.
As a fuel.
Okay. How do we buy it? On a monthly basis, on a weekly basis,
Yes.
on a daily basis?
On a monthly basis. So this is the what I've just quoted is a super, not crude. It's a product.
It's already refined.
It's a refined product
Yeah.
itself. The super, the diesel, and the kerosene.
You see, where I'm going with my questions is this, huh? There are people in this country who actually understand these trends.
Yeah.
They know this thing is going to go. Brings me to the question, do we have a storage capacity? Must we only have a storage capacity that can last us a month? Is it even strategic? Is it even wise to have that sort of storage? And even when you negotiate for these prices, when you're buying it from someone, surely if the thing costs 2 shillings now, and I want to sort of like buy and preempt the good price, can I not negotiate so that that cost more or less doesn't change very much, even if the price does go up?
Negotiate with the seller
Yes.
upstream.
We don't produce it, so the people we buy it from and say, look, guys, this is what I'm planning to buy for X. I'm thinking as a layman here, for X number of period, and we've been doing this business for some time.
Yep.
Now, so that I don't suffer, can we agree that I will buy it at this particular price over the next? Is that not a discussion that sounds like a country would have?
I think for a product whose price varies by the minute, it's also hard for that refiner to fix it. That whole hedging. Remember the hedging? KQ tried the hedging of fuel.
Now, the KQ's theory is
some disastrous
a bit
consequences.
different, but
Yes.
nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yes, a bit
So
different.
the global price of fuel, it's fluctuating. It's a going commodity.
It always fluctuates. It always fluctuates. It's like the price of any product, or any consumer product, or any product that we have, whether it's agricultural. What I'm asking is, what I think is a practice that people in business have. You negotiate, perhaps with something being anticipated, or in taking into account what is happening. Everything considered.
Yep.
There are people whose job is to do this maths.
Yep.
That's what they do.
And I'm sure they try to do that. I would imagine greatly that they would.
When it comes
For you to participate, for example, in this kind of large business, because this is a multi-billion shilling
it is.
business, especially when you're doing now the open tender, where you are tendering and you're competing. This company, Eric's company versus CT's company versus Ndu's company, and we're doing the open tender to supply the product for the country. So we are talking about bringing in a huge tanker by yourself, winning that tender. You are looking at ensuring that you win this tender by bringing the lowest bidder, which means that you've gone to your guy who's supplying you that oil and decided, you know what, I want to secure this business for the next 6 months. So let's strike a deal. You're going to sell it to me at this much, so that every time I'm presenting my bid,
This
I'm
is the price
lowest.
that I'm giving.
I'm the lowest
So
bidder.
are you saying that our ministry or that looks after our petroleum issues is being treated unfairly because of other practices that other departments of government have in the past shown us? Because what I am actually bringing forth here is mistrust. I'm simply saying this thing still doesn't make sense to me.
So, for example, let's look at this. This is the breakdown of the costs of super petrol, diesel, and kerosene in Nairobi between the 15th of July this year and the 14th of August today. Okay? Landed costs. This is how they calculate this. So the weighted average of landed cost. So for super petrol, 31. Then now let's start adding. Pipeline transport from Mombasa to Nairobi at 2 shillings and 16 cents. Umeweka hiyo? Ongeza. Pipeline losses at 0.03 shillings. Ongeza. Depot losses at 0.38 shillings, ongeza. Delivery within 40 kilometers of Nairobi, 0.54 shillings, ongeza. Imported margin, that's wholesale, 4 shillings and 20 cents. Dealer's margin, it's capped. Retail investment margin, 4 shillings and 5 cents. Retail operating margin, 4 shillings and 14 cents. So the oil marketing company's margin, 12 shillings and 39 cents. If you add all those things, they do not go very far above the 31.42 that it landed at, and about, let's say, 40 bob. But we have been buying fuel in Nairobi at 100 shillings and 48 cents. Why? Here is the reason. First of all, did you remember all those things all those fees I was doing is 0.3 shillings,
Yes,
0.2 shillings, 0.35 shillings. Now let's come to what the government is making. Excise duty, 20 shillings and 92 cents. Fuel landed at 31 shillings. Excise duty is
already 50
20 shillings
now, yeah?
and 92 cents. Road maintenance levy, 18 bob. Already just these two, 20.92 plus 18 is 38, is more expensive than how much that fuel was when it arrived. It arrived at 31. It has just been slapped with just two taxes. It has doubled. And then we go to petroleum development levy, 5 shillings and 40 cents. Petroleum regulatory levy, 0.25 shillings. Railway development levy, 0.56 cents. Anti-adulteration levy, this time we were not charged, we were happy. Merchant shipping levy, 0.03 cents. Import declaration fee, that one is 0.99 cents. VAT, 7.41. Total taxes, 53.56. For fuel that arrived in Mombasa at how much? 31.42. Taxes have gone to 53.56. And that's how come you end up paying 100 shillings and 48 cents at the pump. They say that you pay tax and you're given a bakshishi of fuel.
What is of interest, if I take my mind to the country of Bangladesh, I've mentioned Bangladesh in the recent past.
Yes.
They discovered natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they did with it?
Mm-hmm.
Among the things they do with the natural gas is they also use it as an additive to the fuel that they use in their vehicles.
Mm.
So, the cost of running your vehicle in a place like Bangladesh is infinitely less, simply because the natural gas that they found in the country is being put to. Yes. We decided at some point when we were producing alcohol as a byproduct of the sugarcane to have alcohol infused into our fuel. Brazil does a very good job of it, and it did. That story died completely.
Why?
I don't know why it died. It just stopped being an issue. The issue of trying to find ways of ensuring that what we may have locally.
So infuse some of the alcohol from sugar into the...
No. Actually, it's not alcohol from sugar. One of the byproducts of sugarcane is alcohol. Yes. Now, this alcohol, it's long been proven that you can actually infuse this alcohol into petrol as we know it, or petroleum products, and you still have a combustible product that is useful on vehicles. Okay, we were not inventing it. It's being done even as we speak right now.
So at the refinery stage,
Yes. Yes. We produce it. It's the same way.
And those are the days we used to have a refinery, Kipevu.
Yes, we did. We did have a refinery at Changamwe. It's the same way that you use that same alcohol to produce sanitizers. It's the same alcohol that is also used to produce alcoholic beverages.
Yeah.
It's the same alcohol that's used as industrial alcohol, meaning the uses are many. Now, we've had the capacity to do this. By the way, we also produce natural gas, just so that you understand. But it isn't much talked about. What I'm saying is this. I'm sure the government has plans to ensure that all these natural resources that we have are explored and utilized for the benefit of the people. But so long as one doesn't see where that benefit is coming from, or one doesn't hear of some of these natural resources or things that we produce locally, then one is forced to keep thinking that the government is quite happy just bringing in the fuel at the price they do and again charging the living daylights out of us.
I think it's unfortunate that these decisions are made in the manner in which they are made. Something like fuel, for example, which then is very important, not just for your citizens to move around, but is also then important for industry to operate, is important then for, like they say, roads and stuff like this to be maintained. The government can play a critical role in making sure that this is subsidized for people. I mean, look at countries like Libya. We understand that they're an oil producer. However, the pump price for fuel is something ridiculous, like 15 US cents on the liter.
This is Gaddafi's Libya or the current Libya?
No, as early as late as 2017. So I mean, that's what they were paying at the pump. It's ridiculous. For example, I'll give you in Nigeria, the comparative price to Kenyan shillings for fuel per liter is 40 shillings, which is ridiculously high also for an oil producing nation.
Yeah.
So again, and this is because, unfortunately, the crude that goes into Nigeria is the crude that leaves Nigeria then comes back refined in the same country, whereby Nigeria could very well refine its own crude and then have it at the same price as Libya or Saudi Arabia, for example. But it's governments not making the conscious the conscious decision not to do what the CS had talked about there, where you can tinker with it to make sure that your people who are going to buy this fuel anyway can actually benefit from using it.
You know, now, unfortunately, as you've heard from the petroleum guys, they're saying that, yes, they are going to be able to cushion you, but you'll have to pay in advance.
All right,
for the
it's
cushion.
like, I will heal you, but let me make you sick.
Let me make
first.
you a little bit. Actually, let me make you as sick as possible, so that when I do start to heal you, you feel that you get some reprieve. But when you look at it properly, it really isn't.
Yeah, because there's a levy that's being introduced here.
Yeah, it's
So
another
that now this
introduction.
Not being, it
Has been introduced. Yes, already.
So here you are thinking that, all right, we could have maybe done a little bit better. A few shillings here and there would have helped. But it really doesn't, because what they give you with one hand has been taken away by the other.
29 minutes to 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads this Friday morning, or this 14th day of August 2020. We expect that later this afternoon, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority will release a statement telling us how much we're going to buy petrol, diesel, and kerosene in the next 30 days. And concern has been rising that the price of kerosene, for example, is set to go up this month. So really, we're trying to understand what does that mean. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Okay, so it's good because it's not too crazy today. Let's take a look now outside of the city and into Kisumu, where Nyanza traffic rather tells us that it's looking pretty good, and getting out of the city where a lot of people now will be going up country, as it were. Not too much traffic this Friday morning. Let's step back in where Thika Road is looking pretty good as you get into the CBD. Outbound, there seems to be a little bit of traffic. Juja traffic flow is very good. Going out, it's okay. As Thika Road, as well as Mombasa Road, rather, and it's also looking good. We don't have any holdups so far, just your normal junction traffic here and there. It's locked on Jogger Road for some reason, trying to get into the CBD via the City Stadium roundabout, and there's traffic far back as Hamza right now. It is a Friday. People are running around doing their errands, so we'll wait and see what it looks like in about a half hour or so, but you shouldn't have too much trouble this Friday morning. Don't forget, you can let us know, Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Everything nice, Spice FM.
mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
All right,
Spice
25
FM,
minutes
Nairobi.
to 7 o'clock. Not to 7, to 8. Yeah, so the price of petrol, diesel, and kerosene is expected to rise today.
Shoot.
Let's just use the word shoot, right? Shoot today. And especially the price of kerosene. You know, when you talk about kerosene, who uses kerosene? Kerosene is used for lighting. Kerosene is used for cooking. All right, by very many people. Let's also talk about diesel. Diesel is the one that's used for transport. So when you talk about
Especially
transport,
public transport.
this is where diesel is used. When those two go up simultaneously at the same time, together.
Yes, Eric, simultaneously,
Yeah.
meaning one after the other.
Yeah, one after the other, you know.
Together.
Together. It affects people's livelihoods. It affects people's spending power.
My friend, it affects them so directly.
Directly.
You see,
And we are talking about also the vulnerable people. So somebody who's vulnerable, who was receiving 1,000 shillings every Tuesday from the government to buy kerosene for cooking and lighting, also now is looking at that, the value of that 1,000 bob going down because of the rising cost.
it actually goes down significantly when you think about it, because if you increase the price of fuel, it means you've increased the price of transport. So it means anything that is transported that is consumed will also increase
go
in
up.
price.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a vicious cycle that is well known. So when one talks about improving the livelihoods of those who are vulnerable,
Yep.
you really have to ask, what are you talking about?
What exactly do you mean? Petrol last month, not petrol, kerosene.
Kerosene.
Last month, cost landed in Mombasa 15 shillings and 21 cents. Okay? So let's put in those transportation and distribution fees. That's a pipeline from Mombasa, bringing it via pipeline to Nairobi. Let's talk about pipeline losses. Let's charge the depot fees. Let's talk about delivery within 40 kilometers of Nairobi. All that combined, 2 shillings and 85 cents extra. Okay? So from 1521, add 2 shillings and 85 cents. Then you say, all right, so the people who are selling this, the petroleum companies, let's cap your margin so that we say that the most that is going to go up by is 12 shillings and 36 cents. That is oil marketing companies' margins. 12 shillings, 36 cents. Then now let's come to the government and its levies. So fuel that arrived at 15 shillings and 21 cents has gone up by 285 plus 12.36. That's about 15 bob. So it has gone to 30 bob, right? 30 bob.
We're at double.
Everything from the point it's landed to the point it's come to your petrol station. It has gone up just by 30 bob. Then the government comes and says, lete pesa yangu. How much is this government going to ask in that lete pesa yangu? 35 shillings per
Double.
litre of kerosene.
So you know what's going
Double.
to happen?
So it arrives at 15 shillings and 21 cents in Mombasa. And when you're going to queue at the petrol station to buy a litre of kerosene, you're buying it at 65 shillings and 45 cents.
Just in case you thought it was safe to get out of the water, now with these increases we're talking about, they are going to add 18 shillings, 18.03 shillings, which will bring it to 83.48 shillings. New price of kerosene.
83 bob.
83 bob.
As in kerosene goes up between this morning and tomorrow morning, 18 bob.
Yes.
This is madness. This explains why we are seeing pictures even on social media, and I think our producer John also shared this even yesterday. Petrol stations, now you're seeing people queuing
Yes, they are.
for kerosene
They are.
because they've already heard that it's
The
going to
prices
go
are
up.
going to go up
And so what do you want to do? Hedge. Buy kerosene
and store.
and store. And that is as somebody who has money at this point to be able to buy extra kerosene in cash.
Which is what I'm saying. Then you'd rather not even have the look, because when you have the conversation about cushioning, when you have the conversation then about helping your people in a time where things are already dire, it calls on all sectors that are involved in this. It's not just about national government from where they sit,
Yep.
and then the Ministry of Health, for example, or the Ministry of finance. It's not just them. It's other people who are involved in this. And for them to sit down and say, do we have or can we have a viable solution for this? If you are used to shafting your people generally, okay, take a break, okay? In this time where these things are going on, is it not possible that you can look at something that is actually going to benefit your people? The one place where you are able to make all of this money all the time is the place that is most likely to cause the most suffering on people in this period if you don't do something about it. We know for a fact that once you touch fuel, you touch everything else.
Yeah.
You touch food, you touch transport, you touch markets, you touch everything. So you can't say, well, it's just the fuel prices and we're going to come and give you 1,000 shillings and cushion everything else. Because you touch fuel and that goes up, guess what? Everything else goes up.
You know something that is a bit tricky here? Remember, the government extended some benefits to the people by, first of all, reducing VAT from 16% to 14%.
It is 2 shillings.
The 2%. Fuel was not at 16%. Fuel was at 8%. According to the budget, the taxation law for this year, it's not that it's gone to 6% because there's a 2% reduction. No. VAT on fuel is at 8%. And that's the basis with which they are calculating these prices. When they're doing VAT, they're not doing VAT at 6%. No, they're doing VAT at 8%.
And consider that.
So VAT has not basically, on fuel, has not been, we've not received a waiver from the government.
They would argue that it was higher before they brought it to 8.
Yeah, it's better than 16.
There is some logic behind this, but that logic, it escapes me. I honestly do not really understand some of these things but look, on a happier note, if you are thinking to buy a second-hand car, the prices have gone down. And because of this, the reason is very simple: demand.
Nobody is buying.
Nobody's buying, so you can state what you want for as long as you like. If there are no takers, that's dead stock. It's not moving.
Now, speak as somebody who is in this business of importing cars. Okay? Somebody who's in the business of importing cars, and in February, you had imported a number of vehicles and brought them here to a certain yard, and they've been sitting there for the last couple of months. You're paying rent for that yard, and then there are no takers, and you're forced to even lower the price. What are we talking about?
Losses. You know, you are going to first start thinking of making a small margin. Then you move and realize, no, let me break even.
Yeah.
Then you realize, let me just consider the sort of losses I'm able to shoulder.
Cut my losses now and move on.
Yeah, because if this car sits here, it means all this money is sitting here.
Yeah.
Let me at least claw back some of it. It isn't a good thing.
No.
It isn't a good thing.
It's good news for people who want to buy vehicles. It's bad news for the people who are in that trade. But also, going back into the future, you can look at how long do you think this is going to last? The drop in prices.
No, because it's been dropping. And
especially looking at the global trends and all.
The global trends, there's been dropping, but in Kenya, it dropped by 37.6%.
Wow.
That's almost 40%.
Within how
drop.
long? Within how long?
We're talking about the 5 months ending May.
A 40% drop in just 5 months.
Yes. You know, that isn't good.
Yeah.
In fact, some of the high-end cars that cost millions, the reductions in prices have also been in the millions.
Yeah.
Because you have to decide.
You know, unfortunately, for many of the cars, especially the second-hand motor vehicles that we're talking about, the second-hand vehicles that you find in the yards, duty was already paid.
Otherwise,
by the time it came in, it was already done. It wouldn't be here if it didn't happen. It's not like you can say, all right, I'll pay you later when somebody buys it.
Yeah.
No, it came in and that was already sorted. So all of that duty is being transferred to the individual who's going to buy it.
Oh, yeah. And now it's being now shouldered by the person who's selling it.
But it also brings in the business model that somebody has if you're in any business. But since we're talking about the car industry, second-hand car industry, the model that you have, because I am informed that there are certain importers of vehicles who have a completely different model. They allow you to pay a certain deposit. They keep the logbook, they have a track on the vehicle, and you can drive away with the car. But you pay a certain amount per month.
It's the higher purchase.
Yes.
Kind of.
Meaning they've done the maths and they figure if we have these number of cars every month and this amount of money is coming in, then we're okay. And it isn't an amount that will kill you.
Yeah.
No. And then there are those who also argue that those who've done their maths will tell you that by the time a certain period has more or less lapsed, they more or less know that they've
made their money.
They're okay. Whatever they spent. And part of it is because they can't have a car sitting in the yard. That doesn't help them. Because that car represents money that is sitting.
Yeah.
So they would rather have a plan. Again, this is something that COVID is going to do. Inadvertent as it may sound, people are going to change the way they do very many things. Simply because they do not have, if I may speak Kenyanese, they don't have any otherwise.
And the thing is that what forces such things then to become permanent is because you then realize that it actually can work. It can serve a different business model than was previously practiced. I mean, just look at some offices now who had to go and have their employees work from home as a result of COVID, have now taken the decisions to do that because they realize, wait a minute, we can reduce our overheads of rent, things that we have to supply in the office, for example, like beverages here and there, transport, this, that, the other thing. People can actually work at home. We spend a little money to make sure that they have the equipment that they need at home, and then you maintain that.
Yep.
This way that you're talking of doing business now, where people then will you buy a vehicle and you can pay in installments kind of thing, people are going to realize that that is actually the viable business, and you can actually do that as opposed to making the demands in complete form that you did before, just because of what the world has dictated. It would be fantastic if such models then were also adopted by governments. Because there is no hard and fast rule that says because you're a government entity that you can't tweak the way in which you do business. There's nothing like that.
By the way, if you look at the West, Eric yesterday mentioned something called deficit financing. One of the things that, America perhaps is my best example. They do not fear operating on debt. You can live on debt. So long as you have a steady income, you can live on debt. A car, not difficult to purchase.
Yep.
Selling, not difficult. Getting a new model, not difficult. Meaning, they long understood that these are consumer products. And how do you ensure that the new products keep being consumed? You make it simple and easy for people to have them. So, ours, the philosophy seems to be the complete opposite. Make it as difficult as possible. For people to actually get things which are actually quite simple and straightforward.
Make it a capital acquisition of everything.
Very, very difficult.
It's a car, you have to own it, you have to buy it, own it. I mean, even the leasing industry, do you think the leasing industry
in
would
Kenya
be able to thrive in this country? I mean, you'd expect that because the government started that, then you'd see it, coming down to the other parts of the economy.
Even the
government does not own many of the
even
police
the ones
vehicles
that
that we have.
Okay, well, if you want to talk about leasing, you can look at the whole mess that we are talking about now. The mess. Yeah. Even that one they managed to bungle. So I mean, the leasing attitude or practice then needs to really be looked at if you want, because
it
is
has worked
viable.
well
It
in
has
motor
worked
vehicles. In the
very
police
well.
service, for instance, many of the vehicles that we see
Are not owned by the service.
They're not owned by the service.
But it makes sense, doesn't it? Why do they want to own vehicles?
Oh, well, yeah, exactly.
Because owning vehicle means that you're maintaining a yard, you're maintaining central workshops, and all those things.
What you want is a vehicle that does what it's supposed to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, get back to basics. Ask yourself, are we in the business of buying and owning cars? The answer is no.
No.
Our business is security. Do we need vehicles? Yes. How do we get a vehicle and not worry about how it should be maintained and what? Because there are people who do precisely that. They not only sell cars, but they know how to maintain them. You see, it's slow, but it's progress, if you ask me. And I sometimes think that some of these issues that we're discussing here and some of the problems we keep raising will help in furthering that progress that we're talking about.
It would.
It will, because you look at the reality and you realize I have to make that hard decision. I have to take that direction that ordinarily I would not have taken. Do you think it has been easy for people who lived in town, worked in town, to suddenly decide, children going to school in town, to decide, I'm relocating and taking these people home? Because life is simpler there. That alone, not an easy decision. What made it impossible or difficult was they didn't have money. But the moment some money seemed to be coming in, that's it, immediately. Now, I personally think that...
And when they go back now to the rural areas, It's not that they're sitting back doing nothing.
No.
They start looking for opportunities. You start doing whatever you're doing, and it becomes, well, this is now my new life.
Do you
So
know?
the need for coming back to the city.
There's no need.
Actually, if you think about it, even with the devolution, there are very many people who moved back to their counties or to the counties because of devolution. They realized the very thing you're doing in Nairobi, you can actually do.
Can do that.
Yes.
The same opportunities have now moved.
And they had. Some things which hitherto had not existed now came into existence. But again, if you were to talk about the management of the economy, you would argue that sometimes when you look at COVID and the problems around it, it isn't even a COVID problem. It's a management problem.
It's a management issue.
COVID notwithstanding, COVID just sort of like highlights it and brings the whole issue to the fore, so you have to look at it in a way that you would have preferred not to.
Yeah.
But it has simply highlighted something that had existed before. And if you look at the push and pull and the resistance, that is because, again, it's not that we don't like change. We don't like change that doesn't benefit us directly. If the change is beneficial, we will change very quickly. Very quickly.
Pretty
Yes, we will.
fast. There's a lot of also people doing business with government that influences, maybe that's a deep state, influences
There it is.
the decision making in government.
It
Because
does.
you may find that, things that you'd think would be very fast to do and implement are taking forever. Decisions that should be taken are taking forever. to
Eric,
be
let
taken.
me ask you. For instance, there's this article that appeared in the Business Daily. Chinese firm starts work on old railway link to SGR. Okay?
Yeah.
This now raises a debate that was there before. Why didn't you just repair the old railway line? Did we need to spend those hundreds of billions of shillings for this one? I mean, there was a railway existed.
Yeah.
We knew where to get trains
Yeah.
that could ply that particular route. Why did we? Now, again, this one, I'm taking this direction. The government failure to explain the decisions that they make well. Because I'm sure this can be explained well.
They could explain pretty well, I'm sure.
Yes.
But then also, there's something that they may not be able to explain. The variation in cost.
That one,
Initially, when we were starting, it was going to cost us 1 billion. Now it costs us 13 billion. And the reason is because we wanted to eat some of the money. They will not be able to explain that.
where you're 100% right. See, the arithmetic begins in the era when Kibaki was president. Because this is when it was planned.
Yep.
And there was a budget. And so the question that is asked is, okay, so this is what we knew it was going to cost.
Yeah.
Why must it cost this?
Why is that such a huge variation?
unfortunately,
And
that-
over 40%.
Yes. And that question is simply also going to be asked with regards to this issue of the old railway. And yet, it could be explained.
You'll find it. Now that we're talking about, demanding accountability, I'm seeing one of the other commissions, and remember Martha Karua talked about, we have very many commissions, and these are watchdog commissions, and they should be doing their job in terms of demanding accountability. One of them has done that, and this is the Commission on Administrative Justice, the Ombudsman. The chairperson, Florence Kajuju, has directed state agencies to release information regarding their management of COVID-19 funds to the public. At a press conference yesterday, she said the current secrecy surrounding utilization of the funds is unconstitutional and a breach of the public's trust. She is adding that they should also explain how they spent the money, the names of the service providers, and the contractors who received the payments. You would think that this would be obvious, right? That even a commission does not have to come and say, you know what, why do you have to have the secrecy? And then you'll hear the government and the government officers telling you, this information is available if you want it.
I don't doubt for a single second that it's available. I don't doubt. But
If you want this information, it's available.
Come and get it if that's what you're looking for.
The government does not just spend money without any documentation. For every shilling that leaves the government coffers, there is an accompanying document.
And that is actually a statement of truth.
It's true.
However, it's besides the point.
Yeah.
So, true as it is, you see, it's like the same issue that brought us to this discussion, fuel. How do you explain that the one thing that guarantees an increase or a decrease in the cost of things in the country, leading the cost of living, how is it possible that it is not understood that this is the one thing that the government should find a way of subsidizing.
I think it's understood. I just don't think they want to. If they wanted to badly enough, they could actually sit down and come up with a formula whereby they're not smarting from that decision, and at the same time, the people then are able to benefit. And I think that's what it all comes down to. We're replete with examples of how other countries have made this possible. There are, and I just did this now, there are half the countries in the world who are able to give the pump price of fuel, some who are not oil producers, at less than $1 to their people. They're able to do this without even blinking. Some even less than 25% of $1. Why? Because there are certain decisions that they have made, and this has been...
They prioritized it.
And the will has been applied to this. The will has been applied. I refuse to believe that it's set in stone, it's cast in stone, you can't change it. For goodness sake, COVID came and the UK Parliament sat down and revised their budget because of this. How are we going to be able to cushion the people? Can we take money out of what we had planned initially and put money in the hands of people because we're asking them not to move? Budget had been signed and agreed and passed. But they came back and said we can actually change this. I refuse to believe that there's anything that government has put in place that cannot be tweaked, that cannot be changed, that cannot be sat on and discussed, and some will applied, priority applied. But we are, I think,
and some of them are not even costly.
It's not. It's not.
In
difficult
fact, it's
to
been
do.
argued before. You see, the companies that supply fuel into the country, right? These are independent business entities.
Businesses.
For you to be able to bring in a tanker with thousands of metric tons of petroleum products into the country, you have spent so much money.
Yes, you have.
Which means that you have gone to a certain financier, and there's a cost to that. What if the government did the
What if they underwrote it?
did the underwriting for these companies?
Would it not cost less?
How much of a drop would there be with the landed cost?
Significant.
Go on.
Kenyans are not asking, and neither are the world citizens asking for you to take it and chop it into a quarter. I mean, that would be nice.
Or stop collecting
Or
tax.
stop. Nobody's asking you to do that. But everybody's just asking at this point, can you make life a little bit more livable?
You know, the tax we're
That's
referring
it.
to here is not what makes the government function, but the taxes that people seek to collect for themselves. Hence these hikes that we keep seeing. Someone has done the maths and said this one is good for the government. This one is?
Let's take it. Let's leave it.
Let's move it elsewhere.
Yes.
Keep it right here. In the next hour, we're going to talk about fake news. COVID-19 fake news. What's some of the fake news stories that you've seen around COVID-19? Many, yeah?
They're quite a number. I don't know. Where do you want me to start?
Starting from the remedies to that there is no
The
COVID.
transmission,
to this is
whether
how
Africans can get it or not. We can all get it.
Yeah. So this is what we'll be discussing in the next hour. But before we do that, as we go to the top of the hour, today's Proverbs City, and explain it a bit.
No matter how tall a tree might grow, it will shed its leaves on the ground. No matter how tall a yarn you spin for the citizenry of this country, the truth will always out. It doesn't matter how much you spin it. We'll get to figure it out sooner or later.
So whatever is up there
You
will
spin
end
it.
up.
You
will
keep
end
telling
up.
us, throw in some financial jargon while you're at it, some technical terms that seem difficult to understand. At some point, it'll become obvious that this is what was happening, because this is the information age. And one can always draw parallels, one can always compare, and one can always ask questions. But if this is happening here, why is it not happening here?
You'll tell us it was the most expensive thing to buy PPEs. It was the most expensive thing to buy testing kits. It was the most, and that's why we are passing on the cost to the citizens,
Yet
the taxpayers.
there's a story of being able to produce PPEs, being able to even manufacture and produce test kits. That story begins and dies. And yes, and we have the capacity to do so.
It's possible for it to be done.
Yes, it is possible.
It was the most difficult thing for us to do contact tracing.
And we were doing contact tracing before it became difficult to do. And then you're told it's the numbers. And you're asking, but yes, we understand, but surely we have seen the progression of these numbers. Anyway.
It's a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. We are broadcasting in Nairobi 94.4, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5, Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi. And in the next hour, we will be talking about fake news. We will be talking to two people who are very well versed in the matters of fake news in either public domain, on all spheres of public domain, in legacy media, in digital media. And this is with regards to the fight against COVID-19. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Traffic looks really good today, guys. And when I say looks good, I mean that nobody is stuck anywhere. So let's look at industrial area where Likoni Road is clear, but going towards Jogo Road from the side of industrial area, that's a problem, guys. It's moving bumper to bumper. On Thika Road, it's smooth from Muthaiga into the city centre. Traffic is there, but it's not going to cause any headaches as such. Well, at least not now. There's a traffic snarl up from Maimahiu stretching more than 5 kilometers, and it's backed up towards Limuru. Guys are going away for the weekend, and this is what we expected to see. We also know that the visibility is pretty low, so everybody's moving a little bit slower. So if you're heading that direction, know that you're going to be stuck. So maybe you want to postpone your time of departure. So that's Maimahiu towards Limuru, backed up about 5 kilometers, moving very, very slowly this morning. We'll take a look at what it looks like in other parts in a short while. But for now, if you see something that you might get stuck or help anybody get out, let us know. Spice FMKE, that's on Twitter.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to...
Ndu, talk to us about fake news.
So there's a lot. Fake news was a phenomenon that was brought into the world sphere quite a while ago. And we know that one of the individuals who talked about fake news and who still continues to talk about fake news till now is the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And fake news as an idea basically is that, there will be information that is spread, information that pops up at us, and you not really sure what it is, but because it finds its way into media, you're likely to believe it without doing any kind of research or further investigations. Now, fake news has also reared its head when it comes to the conversations that we have around COVID. There's been so much that has been said, and it was easy for this to be perpetuated because of the fact that COVID still, even till now, is quite novel. There's a lot of information that we don't have about it. There are things that change on a regular basis. So unfortunately, then it was very easy to spin narratives about things that maybe were based on just a little bit of fact as opposed to complete truths. And this has found its way and has nestled quite permanently in the minds of very many people. Mm-hmm. So there are things that you will unfortunately now not be able to tell anybody about COVID, for example, which may be the truth vis-a-vis the idea that they've already put in their minds. So fake news has already rooted itself when we talk about COVID-19. But unfortunately, there are consequences to this. And those are some of the things that we want to look at this morning.
There's a story that was published on by the BBC on the 12th of August that at least 800 people may have died around the world because of COVID-related misinformation in the first 3 months of this year. According to researchers, in a study published in the American Journal of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene, 5,800 people were admitted to hospital as a result of false information on social media. Many died from drinking methanol or alcohol-based cleaning products. They wrongly believed the products to be a cure for the virus. And the WHO has previously said that the infodemic surrounding COVID-19 spread just as quickly as the virus itself, with conspiracy theories, rumors, cultural stigma all contributing to deaths and injuries. So it's not just a Kenyan phenomenon. It's basically a global thing.
It is.
Where people are drinking methanol or alcohol and things, saying, because they have read somewhere. And remember, even we've had callers here calling and saying, I have heard that if you do this, and the other, you and COVID, you cannot get COVID. All that information spreading on social media, especially remember in the first 2 months, all these WhatsApp forwards from, certain doctor who worked in India and then went to China and is the one who did what in China, and then he came back and he was saying, if you do this, and the other,
You'll be fine.
Yeah, if you sleep, I don't know how many hours a day, and you drink how many liters of water, and then you very, very many of these stories.
What is significant about it is that it is deliberate.
Deliberately spread by?
Deliberate misinformation.
Explain.
You see, for something to be fake, it means there must be something real that counters it or contradicts it. There must be something that is not fake. So something may have happened and it can be reported exactly as it happened. And then something can be reported with a twist. It did happen, but not quite the way it be presented. Now, if it's deliberate, then essentially someone is misinforming you. Deliberately giving you information that is not true.
Twisting it.
Yes. That is one of the elements that makes this information fake. And now in the 21st century, the information age, when the avenues through which you can actually purvey information are so vast and so varied, it becomes really easy to reach any segment of any population that you want to. You just need to target them and even understand what they would lap up, and you direct it. And it'll hit home.
Choice of the word lap up doesn't go unnoticed. Does it mean that this person does not have any way of verifying this information? Or is it that they are too gullible to the source of information that, as long as it's CT who said this, I believe them, and therefore I'm going to follow what they said?
There's that, but there's also information that already meets a certain threshold that you already have of expectations. There are things that people are already primed towards understanding or believing or accepting. So if that information tends in that direction, they'll take it in very easily without too much questioning.
And even better, if there's somebody that they look up to or accord some kind of respect who then says it, they're likely to go with it.
Case in point, if you look at some of the discussions we've had around the issues in this country that have been in the Senate for this long, and the spillover has been the story of marginalization. And marginalization is being touted and being spoken of as though we got independence last week. And because that independence which we got last week, there are very many things that haven't been done. And so marginalization is as real as it was in 1964. Yes, and now 63. That's not true. Fake news. It's not true. A lot has happened since. Yes, there was all that. But currently, you cannot make a statement and speak as though nothing has changed and everything has remained as it was. Now, I'm giving that as an example because it strikes me. Fake news. When the government tells you, we are going to, please listen carefully, we are going to increase the price of fuel, but we're doing this so that we can cushion you when the price of fuel becomes volatile. You're making it volatile.
By saying that alone.
Yes.
I guess when it comes to fake news, the thing about it is everybody thinks that it's only the other person who can fall prey to fake news.
Yes.
That they cannot fall prey to fake news.
Yes.
But also, they do not interrogate the news that they consume themselves.
No, or news that appeals to them, or news that meets whatever need that they have. Yes.
There are very many organizations in the country and in the world that look at the authenticity of information. One such organization is called Africa Check, and Africa Check just basically does that. It checks any information that is out there in the public domain, fact-checking. And fact-checking is actually a very big thing in information consumption, because people will come in and throw in words and figures and say, for example, in the 2019-2020 budget, we spent 3.67 billion shillings, 3.67 billion in taking directly to 125 families across the country. And just because someone has said that, you're like, now 365 billion has been spent. you take it up and follow it up, right? So organizations such as Africa Check are the ones that go back and say, wait.
Start again.
3, where? True. Is there any other information that relates to this that could show that this is actually the case?
That can help us corroborate
Yeah.
this, yes.
Is there anything on government records that can show this? Is there anything in the community that can corroborate this information? Let's speak to the editor of Africa Check in Kenya. This is Alphonse Chiundu. He's joining us on the line and also on video. Good morning, Alphonse.
Thanks, Latif. Good morning. Hi, CT, and hi, Lou.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Good morning. Happy to be with you.
Thank you.
Dude. Yes.
Welcome to the Situation Room, Alphonse.
Thank you.
We'll also shortly be speaking with a Kenyan blogger, internet entrepreneur, cyber activist. Those are the words that he uses to describe himself. Robert Olai, and Robert is also on the line. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Lou, Alphonse, and CT.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Robert.
Let's start with you, Alphonse. We have talked about fake news and the way people like to just take up CT's word, lap up this information. What is it that makes people just see information and consume it as is?
So for what we are seeing specifically for COVID-19
Yep.
is a lot of the information that people are lapping up. Thank you, CT, for that word. A lot of that information is people are looking for hope. People are looking for something that they can hold on to. They know very well, and it's been announced by everyone, WHO, CDC, KEMRI in Kenya, and the ministry, that there is no cure for COVID-19. But then you keep seeing these messages that there is a cure that is coming. So you do lemons and garlic, or do turmeric or something like that, and ginger, and then you will be fine. So people become somewhat reckless because they understand that there is that. They are hopeful that it worked for somebody. So some of it is being spread by public figures, for example. You remember when it was still too early in the day with COVID-19, and Mike Sonko comes up with food packs for the poor people, and these food packs had Hennessy.
Yep.
And he uses, like, official information is a sanitizer or
Alcohol-based.
Yes, alcohol-based sanitizer with 70% of alcohol will help you will help kill the virus. So, and he says you drink Hennessy and it's gonna sanitize your throat.
Yeah.
And him being a public figure, so people tend to trust public figures. So it is not just in Kenya. So in Uganda, we have the Ugandan speaker, who that's Rebecca Kadaga, who also makes similar claims that there is a Musoga here who has discovered the cure and it's going to be here in 2 weeks. And then people think, oh, now we have a Ugandan with that. You go to Tanzania, the president says his own son had COVID-19. And what did he do? He was doing herbal steaming, kujifukizia. So with blankets and all, breathing warm steam and drinking lemon water and ginger and all those concoctions. And he became fine.
Yep.
In Madagascar, the president comes and says, oh, there is this COVID organics. And you have countries running to him for the cure. Yet at that point, there is no evidence for that.
Yeah. So
when there is that, people are looking for hope, anything to hold on to. And then we also have public figures misleading their flock. It's funny, up to date, we haven't had the religious leaders, because that's also one of the places where falsehood spread based on beliefs, where religious leaders give you water or oil and tell you that this is the cure for whatever disease you're going to get or whatever disease you're going to have.
Yeah.
So that is the spectrum of reasons why we think people are likely to believe false information. And lastly is when this false information is sent by people you are related to or people you trust. So the situation in Kenya and the situation in most of Africa, what we are seeing is in the parents send their children to urban centers after they have gone to school. They go to look for jobs in urban areas. So everybody comes to Nairobi. And once you are in Nairobi, when you send something back home, you say, I got it from the internet. And for most of the folks here, WhatsApp is internet or Facebook is internet. So when they see something on social media, they are going to say, oh, I saw it on the internet and it's true. That's why you find aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters in the villages forwarding you information which is manifestly false and provably false.
Yeah.
But because they got it on the internet, they come back and say, oh, I saw it on the internet, so it must be true.
It must be
or
the
it
truth.
was sent to me by my son in Nairobi or by my daughter in Nairobi. And the people of Nairobi know more than we do in the village. So that's the kind of thinking that we have. And that way false information spreads.
And on traditional media, because of the basic regulation, the code of ethics, the code of conduct, you may find that there's a lot of fact-checking and even seeking to verify information before it spreads. But like you're saying, the internet, it's where information goes and it catches on like fire. Somebody who thrives on the internet, like Robert Alai, let's bring you in now, Robert, because you've seen this kind of information, the way it spreads. A simple, basic one, how to wear a face mask. And then this whole SMS goes round with if you have symptoms, you wear it this way. If you don't have symptoms, you wear it the other way. And this one has been verified by a lady who is a doctor, who's being quoted here is Dr. So-and-so. She's a doctor. It spreads. Why is it so easy for it to happen, Robert?
I think with the nature of the internet is that it has democratized the media. So it's very easy for a nobody to get the devices and basically be very influential. So now you're told that the most powerful media is not a blogger, is not a journalist, but an individual with a smartphone. Yeah, so basically they can reach millions. A small issue with maybe somebody with 1 follower or 2 followers can post something which is believable from nowhere, and people can get to engage it. But I have an issue because there's, apart from the spread of the fake news we are talking about, I don't know how fake news is, and also considering that in philosophy there's relativism, and in relativism, fake news, something which is the truth is not. There's nothing like absolute truth.
It's relative.
So nobody holds absolute truth over anything. Even the scientists, if anybody had the truth on what coronavirus is and how to treat it, we'd have medicine now. We'd have vaccine and we'd have medicine to cure it. Everybody's still trying to understand what this thing is, and that's why some countries are putting a blockade, some are not putting a blockade. So it's very funny outside there, and there's a great lot of funding also around the fight for the spread, the fight against the spread of the fake news, misinformation, and things like that. There's a lot of funding here. So even the organizations which are coming up to curb the said fake news are questionable. Who vetted them? You find that it's one platform which decided that so and so is going to get the funding for the fake news. Who checks the checker? Who is going to gauge on their authenticity, their objectivity? And I had a great issue with one Nigerian doctor. I didn't agree with her, things like there's a prophet who is speaking to her, but she was making some sense. She was talking about drugs which she said she has tested on her patients. But no platform, not Google, not Facebook, not Apple, not Twitter, they were able to give her the platform to share her views and to be vetted by the public, to be engaged and to be asked questions, tough questions, because the internet is very democratic. You will be asked tough questions if you're talking about something. If you're saying something which people don't believe, they'll tell you off, and you'll not last long. I don't believe that the platform's role is to cut people they don't agree with, is to bring one side of which is called the absolute, the official truth, and then shut everybody else down and say that you cannot spread this thing because it's not been proven to be true, but it's not been proven to be false also. Yeah.
So Robert, are you saying essentially that something which starts out as fake news, if then given a platform upon which this information can be verified, it can actually change from fake news to being a reality?
What do you mean it started as fake news? Who branded it fake news?
This is the thing. Because
that's
the
issue.
minute it
Who
comes out,
branded it?
what did we have the other day, for example? The other day, the Russian president said that they have a vaccine.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
There were doubters who sprung up immediately and branded it fake news.
Yep.
Isn't it?
Yep.
Yes.
Without having been given a platform for them to prove. But the Russian president, Putin, went ahead and said that certain things have given them the credence to then say that this thing is actually working. Come to Russia, all ye in the yonder and buy, right?
Yeah.
Now, something that could be deemed as fake news in the beginning, in the lifeline, can then actually become the reality. Is that what you're saying, Robert?
Yes, I'm trying. Because who has branded it fake news? Because I am telling you, the people who are branding it fake news should not be considered, the holders of the absolute truth. The guardian angels over ourselves. I think we need to let science. I believe in science very much because I'm a scientist. I believe in science. I don't want a situation where we are going to throw theories, but also science. We depend on listening to others. What is your logic? What are you saying? If you are saying that the vehicle's wheels have to rotate front for it to move front, how do you call that one? How do you prove that actually the various dynamics are going to work to make the vehicle move faster in that direction? So we engage and you listen to science from location A, science from location B. We listen to the Chinese, the Americans, and the Russians. So the best way for the Russians, for the people to deal with the Russians, was to give the Russians a platform.
Yeah.
Let's share the evidence, the specimens, the tests they have done. Let's listen to them. But now it looks like people don't even trust if the Chinese today brings out a vaccine.
But the question one would ask, Robert, is who would not trust the Chinese?
Why?
I don't trust the Chinese on very many things. Especially the low quality products sometimes they bring. But let me say, on science, we need to listen to every one of them.
Yeah.
Because there are aspects, even some of the phones we call the premium phones we use, we still have to depend on Chinese. So there's an aspect of China which is very good, which is the production economy, even the scientists, they're not so bad off. They are well ahead of everybody. You have seen with the claims, even the 5G, which you're going to talk about, is also related to the COVID and the fears against 5G, the mask, and what it's going to do to the human body, things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to engage the truth and know that the truth, nobody has absolute hold over it.
But I think we get to a point where we are misusing the word fake news as well. If, for example, today, the President of the Republic of Kenya stands up and says there's no COVID-19 in this country, and he says it's because we have not seen any person who has tested positive, and he declares there's no COVID, and then Uganda decides, that is fake news. Does that qualify as fake news? I would guess that is news that has come from an authentic source who has given the reasons why they are making that information. That doesn't make it fake news per se. It just means that they could be giving information which is
true to them.
Fake news, I think, in my definition, would be.
Eric,
Hold on. Fake news here would be where, for example, I go and say that Uhuru has declared Kenya COVID-19 when Uhuru has done absolutely nothing of the sort. Now, there I'd be spreading fake news. I think you see the difference. For example, when a president of Russia comes out openly and says, this is a public announcement, this is what we've done, we have gone through the scientific rigorous testing, we have declared that we have a vaccine and it's going through testing. When Western media or anybody goes and calls it fake news, that is a wrong application of the word fake news, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah. I think it's the wrong application of, and it happened even regionally. You've seen the issue with Magufuli and the Kenyans. The thief at the border. Apart from the big issue about the ego thing, you realize that when the coronavirus started, Magufuli was very categorical that they don't believe it, they don't have it, they don't. Sometimes when the Kenyans did the testing and say that we have found 50 Tanzanians crossing the border to be positive. Magufuli said, no, the Kenyan version is fake because their test process is corrupt. So how do you say the Kenyan president is saying one thing, the Tanzanian president, these are two presidents.
Yeah.
So you have two sources which you are calling credible, and they're disputing each other. So which one is fake? Which one is real? And that's why I say that the best place to get this thing is on an open platform. The issue, again, you realize the Kenyan president, there are pronouncements he has made. And when you see the public furor over one issue, and he has gone back on his word, then the organizations which are fighting fake news comes and say that it's fake because the president of Kenya said that they did say that.
I would ask you, so must something be totally fabricated and made up for it to be fake news? Or even if it has, say, a drop of or two of something suspect, then it becomes fake news?
Becomes fake.
Yes, or is it something that I disagree with because this platform is really broad? Or if I disagree with it because I have an alternate view, then it is fake. At what point does it actually become fake?
Yeah, and Alphonse, I think you can even answer this, Alphonse.
Yes, we try as much as possible not to use the term fake news because we understand it as a misnomer because news is supposed to be accurate, news is supposed to be reliable, verifiable, and something that is based on proof or evidence. But so when you say fake news, we don't use that term. What we try to do, because, and you have seen, and I think that's the question CT is asking, at what point, and Trump has proven that if he does not agree with something, he labels it fake news.
Yeah.
There are people who don't agree with something, they label it fake news. There are people who, when they don't want to interrogate something, they label it fake news. So we use the term, at Africa Check, we use the term false information quite a bit. So that's the term. We say something is false or something is unproven or something is correct. So how do we get to these conclusions that it's correct, it's false, it's unproven? When we have evidence that, verifiable evidence that backs something up, we say that is correct. If we don't have the evidence to prove or either prove or disprove, we say that that is unproven. And that has been the case with a lot of COVID-19 related fact checks. So whether to wear a mask or not, that came as a kind of debate. In the early days, people were like, if you're not sick, don't wear. But then as the evidence emerged that you were supposed to wear a mask because of the asymptomatic patient, then that advice was updated. So as fact checkers, we could not get into this binary field of where we label something as false or not in a situation where there's evolving medical evidence. So our main job is to put the facts out there as they are, so that when you're reading and you're trying to understand what to do, then you have all the information that you need to know whether it's for your own good to wear a mask or if it's not for your own good to wear a mask. So that is, we try to use the best possible research we could get. We try to use the best scientific advice we could get from scientists who are actually working on COVID-19 related research. So that is and we acknowledge the limits of our evidence and the gaps in the credible proof. We would say that, but there are gaps here. And we would explain it to our readers that so far this is what we know, so far this is what we don't know, and we're going to assist you to make this information available.
I think we'll continue this conversation after this quick break where we take a look at weather and traffic and what's happening on the roads. When we come back, Alphonse, we'll need you to answer the question that Robert Alai asked. Who checks the checker? How do we know that you are authentic? How do we know the reason behind you putting yourselves up there as the checkers of this information? This is something we also must discuss as well. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, coming up to 8:30. Let's take a look at what's happening on the skies and on the ground and the roads. And then we come back to have a conversation with Alphonse Shiundu. He's the Kenya editor of Africa Check. And Robert Elai, blogger, internet entrepreneur, and cyber activist. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nyeri.
Right, it's warming up just a little bit in Nairobi. We're going to see today currently at 18 degrees, partly cloudy conditions for most parts of the day. Let's look into Nakuru, where at 16 degrees it's partly cloudy as well. We see that there will be a wet front coming over most parts of the western part of the country. Also, then as we look at Kisumu, 21 degrees and partly cloudy. It's going to remain that way for some parts of today, going into showers later. Currently at 18 degrees in Kakamega and cloudy conditions for most parts of today as well. Okay, so we look into Mombasa and Malindi. We're at 23 degrees in Mombasa and 26 degrees in Malindi. Partly cloudy conditions through the day, and we expect some rain in most parts as well. 21 degrees and partly cloudy in Kampala. 26 degrees, partly cloudy conditions. A bit of a fog over Dar es Salaam. And in Johannesburg at 6 degrees this morning. Still a bit chilly, likely to come down to a low of 4. It's overcast in Lagos at 26 degrees, going to a high of 30 today. Partly cloudy conditions and into rain for most parts of the weekend.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, what's continuing to give us those vibes this morning is out of Nairobi as you head towards the western part of the country. Mahiu, there is a major traffic jam there just past Limuru. As well, we see that the visibility is still rather low, but a lot of people are leaving the city for the weekend, and there's some traffic that is backed up about 5 kilometers, and you're going to have to sit this one out, folks, until it gets better. Thika Road also outbound. There is some traffic there, but it's not too terrible. Coming into the city as well today is looking really good. Mombasa is behaving for the first time. Mombasa Road, rather, is behaving for the first time this week. We'll take a look at how it continues in a short while. Not to forget, you can get in touch with us, Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
The conversation continues.
Mornings done right.
Everything is what we're discussing this morning. In the room is Eric Latif Nduoko, CT Muga. Joining us on the line is Africa Check Kenya editor Alphonse Shiundu and blogger, internet entrepreneur and cyber activist Robert Elai. Before we went to the break, we were talking about, the authenticity. You wanted to ask a question too. Was it Alphonse that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, Alphonse, I'm trying to understand. So now here we are, and I think different things remain realities to different people. So at what point are you checking when some new information comes out that resonates with something that was a reality to you? Let's look at the ginger lemon story as an example. And we even had the Ministry of Health coming out very categorically and stating that, you know what, there's been no proof to this yet. What we're asking is that you remain using the measures that we have told you about. However, to somebody who's had a shot of lemon, ginger and honey every day of their lives for the last 6 months, the reality is different for them, that they have been healthy. So my question is, how then, when presented with a new piece of information, at that point, based on the hope that you've talked about, you're not really thinking, is this scientifically proven or not? You're thinking, here is something that's going to give me some hope and I'm going to run with it. How then do we secure ourselves? How do people secure themselves from any kind of dangers or consequences when the reality for them coincides with this new piece of information that has come out?
Yes. So that is something we are still trying to figure out, how to reach people who believe something because it has worked for them, yet that thing is not proven. So there are two things here. So the first thing is the person is believing COVID-19 as is believing, say, lemons as a cure for COVID-19. Yes. So this person, when you tell them it's not a cure for COVID-19, all it does is it boosts your immunity. So that is the explanation that we have to give them. That all it has done is to boost your immunity and given your body the stamina, to use that word, that it needs to fight off the diseases. So it's making you. That's why it's making you more healthy and unlikely to be attacked by the usual viruses and things like that. Other aspect of that question is people believe the stuff that they work for them. So when you come with the accurate information, there is a cognitive dissonance there. They are looking at it and like, how do I reconcile what I know for a long time that I have been wrong all along?
Right.
Yes. So there is that. And a lot of things are like around COVID-19, around the new coronavirus, has been fed by misinformation, like Hini Homa 2. So if it works for flu, if it works for the common cold, it should work for coronavirus disease.
Yeah.
So that is also something that we're struggling with, to tell people COVID-19 is different. It's not your usual flu. It's not your usual common cold. And the people who understand that distinction are taking the fact checks seriously. Then there are those who it works for me, so it works for Magufuli's son, so Magufuli should be doing something right, and so I think it's going to work for me. So that is an aspect that we, as fact checkers, getting people to believe what the truth is. That is something that we really struggling the fight. The other thing that I just have to point out regarding this specific situation is when we checked Magufuli, when he said that if you do herbal steaming, you're likely to get better from COVID-19. And his claim was, if you steam at 100 degrees getting into your body, it's just going to make coronavirus disintegrate. So our position was to go out and tell people, okay, guys, steam at 100 degrees Celsius, it's very hot. It's going to scald you. So if you're going to do herbal steaming, just do your herbal steaming, but just know if you're going to use steam at 100 degrees, that's dangerous. It's going to scald you. And there are people, there's a scientist we contacted in Japan who has done research doing steam therapy on alcohol and steam therapy on water, like steam. And then his view was that it doesn't, even at 70 degrees, it's still dangerous for you. And then at whatever temperature you inhale steam, the body will cool it. So it's not like when you inhale at high temperatures, it goes through the body at that high temperature. It's going to get cooled as it goes on. And they also pointed out that if you expose yourself to more steam and it burns the hairs on your nose, and then it makes your nose dry, then the possibility of viruses getting in becomes much higher. So it's that science that we let people know. But now the Tanzanians who read the piece came back to us and they were very angry. Their view was this was a geopolitical article, and we ought not to have said we're just beating down Magufuli because he's an African.
Yeah.
And he's an African who's come up with something that worked for his son. And so we should believe him. That we have no, we shouldn't.
How dare you question him?
How dare, yes, something like that. And we're pointing them the dangers. So that is reconciling their thoughts, their beliefs, their knowledge up to that point, even if it's based on false premises. That has been our biggest headache on getting people to trust the evidence that we present to them.
Which demographic of individuals would you say consume this product that you have?
The demographic, okay, so we would say we have a varied number of people who come to us to ask this question. So we have a WhatsApp line and on Twitter. So we invite people to ask us whatever, if they see disputable information or if they see something that is likely to be false or they want verified, they will send us the message on WhatsApp. They will send us, contact us on Twitter, shoot us an email. So the people that we're seeing mostly are young people who are sending us this information. Mm-hmm. And we also see, because most of them tell us they are looking for ammunition to get back at their aunties and uncles and mothers in WhatsApp groups and their parents in WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So that because they forward all manner of things, and they are just looking for something credible to tell them, hey guys, this guy has worked on this, and this is the proof they have given. Look at the people they have spoken to. This is the caliber of people they have spoken to. This is what those people have said, and this is the research that those people have done regarding this specific matter. And so this is what the evidence says. So what this advice that you're putting here is not true, or it's not proven. So we should not trust it. We should not believe it up to this point. So that's the kind of community that we get.
That you do.
Yes, and we do that. Then we also have researchers who are interested in finding out the depth, and so a quick way of finding in-depth information about a very specific granular claim is just to read our work and see where that leads.
Robert, so Alphonse and his team go through the academic and scientific way of fact-checking. As somebody who has influence with a great following and a lot of influence on the digital platforms, do you also do the same? I mean, when I'm sure there are people who will forward you a lot of information, even on WhatsApp. Robert, umesikia hii? Or is this true? So, what do you respond to those?
We try. Which, at this stage, it's not like I started blogging almost 15 years ago. And so at this point, you understand that I am not any other person who doesn't have, because being in the field so long, it means that you have a lot of sources. And, most of them are very well placed. So for me to post something, I'm not perfect. But basically, at least like any other media platform, we'll have our weaknesses. Even the most rigorous checking. You saw CNN, whoever, BBC, they have all fallen to this. They have also made mistakes along the way. Yeah. So I think we make mistakes, but my problem is that the sudden influx of everybody is doing fake news. Personally, I've been approached by 3-4 organizations asking me to go into the fight of the spread news. I say that I'm a publisher. That's not my work. I'll not be.
What would be the import of such, Robert? What would be the import of you spreading this? What is the intention when somebody comes and says, "Do this for us"? Is it to counter another popular narrative? Is it to make people sway in a different direction? What would be the reason why somebody would come and approach you, for example, and say, spread a story about COVID-19, which is not the truth?
Everybody has their intention. If it's a lab, maybe the lab wants to make money from the tests. So if it's government, maybe it's stop fear for their own policy. Because, COVID has also been a very great tool of political manipulation. It's helped some quarters fight their enemies easier than when COVID-19 didn't exist. Now it's very easy to break a rally and say that you cannot meet because there's COVID. It's become a various tool. But you need to check if you're going to talk about scientists. The Science magazine is wondering why Africans are not suffering as much as it was expected. New York Times says that fake news is the new potent tool of censorship. You see, the University of Memphis, Yale, whoever, Reporters Without Borders, they have asked the predators of freedom, press freedom, use fake news as a censorship tool. And, you can read all these reports. It's suddenly cool to be an organization fighting fake news. We need to ask ourselves, the best way to gauge anything which is going to be spread on the internet is to let the internet, the platform users, you are going to listen to you, Eric Latif, the influential people in your practice in the media. You are not going to listen to Robert Alai as much as you would listen to editor in news station A, B, C, D.
True.
Your sources. So everybody has. Sometimes people call them echo chambers, but who gives you the right information on a particular field.
Yeah.
If you're going to listen to Robert, you say I can listen to him on this, but not on this. You see. So and that's how the internet usually works.
I see what you're doing, Robert. You're bringing in that activism on the democratization of information, and okay, so there is space for that.
No.
But also at the same time, saying that's what you're saying, that everybody who gets information now wants to brand it as fake news, as a way of gagging this spread of information.
Agree. We have a lot of fake news, but when the COVID broke. When the COVID broke, and we agree they exist for COVID, when it broke, we alerted the government to what it was not doing right. What did the government do? It was arresting everybody. Say COVID, and in the cells we are sleeping in, the same government, you are sleeping in the cell, which was jammed, and we took photos. The jam, you could not even stand in one place for so long. So you're asking, are you fighting COVID? In those situations, a 5 meter by 5 meter cell has 60, 70 people. You could not even sleep. Then you say, what are you fighting? Are you fighting it this way? It was. I don't know who is the authority now. And people have even questioned the WHO, but you still have to rely on WHO as the authority on health. We have to listen to them. You have to listen to their warnings because they are the global body. The global community needs at least a global, check on this. But I have an issue with these individual organizations, the briefcase organizations everybody has formed to now fight fake news. There are censorship, and the biggest issue I have is censorship. We can disagree on anything, but when we start muzzling everybody who disagrees with us, then the internet does not become democratic again. When you see the platform saying that they cannot spread video A, B, C, D because it has not been declared truthful, then who declares them truthful? It's us to gauge and say that, these doctors who are bringing... There's a very big conversation. You remember the video...
Robert,
yes.
Wait. Before you go to the platforms, let's go to your own platform.
Yes.
I mean, you've got various channels through which you communicate information to the public.
Yes.
When you receive information from anybody and they have a way of reaching out to you, do you verify that information before you post it?
I do. Basically, I do.
That's
the most basic thing to do.
So any of your platforms would not carry information just because you received it?
No.
Okay.
First,
and it's the same thing, for example.
The intention of the source, yes.
Wouldn't you argue that it's the same way that Facebook, for instance, would look at, there's this lady who claims that she's a doctor, who claims that she has healed very many people using this particular medication. But as a platform, we know that the trusted sources for us are these particular doctors, these particular institutions. And if those institutions have raised questions, then we also do not allow this information on the platform. Is it not the same thing? Mark Zuckerberg,
but
Robert Alai doing the same, fact-checking and gagging.
Basically, Facebook is different from Robert Alai. What is Robert Alai doing? Facebook is a platform. Is basically, in fact, Facebook without the people is a shell is a software. It doesn't have its own editor. It doesn't have people going to the field to look for information. It doesn't have its verifiable sources. We are asking the people they are now calling fact checkers, how did they become fact checkers? What platform did you? Because they are now global. They're checking everybody. Facebook and Google and Twitter and Apple's platforms, they're different from what Robert Allah is doing. We are a publication. You see, so we are different from what Standard Media is doing. Standard Media has its own news team which is going to verify information. If it's agriculture, health, what you have all this team you're going to be using, but Facebook is just giving you a platform there. You sharing it. One time it's a dating platform, other time it's a news platform, another time. But now they have a new aspect of information, authentication. They're calling it fact checking. What is the fact?
So, Alphonse, who checks the checkers? And I think that's a question now, because anybody can raise that question and say, okay, so you're bringing this information that it could be true or false. Where are you getting your information from? Who checks you?
All right. So, okay, let me just quickly give a short history of fact-checking in the world. So, before the fact-checking was itself an offshoot of journalism, there was a lot of misinformation going around. So, there was snopes in the late 90s, and then in the early 2000s, there's something called fast draft news. All this is US-based. Now, in 2012, that's when Africa Check was started. And a lot of the work that we've been doing is fighting misinformation. Mm-hmm. So we are in 4 countries, in publishing in different languages: English, French, Zulu, Kiswahili, Wolof, Hausa, and Yoruba. Now, what we do as Africa Check, over the years, we have developed a very transparent methodology on how we do our work. We do not, for example, my background is a journalist. I worked as a journalist for, I think, 12 years. So in journalism, it is okay to use anonymous sources. In fact, checking, it's not. Because when we say that something is not verifiable, when we say that something is not backed up by evidence, we show you why, and we show you the steps so that you can follow yourself and see if we are fudging the evidence or not. So if we speak to a scientist, we give you the name of the scientist and the affiliation, and you can contact the scientist yourself to interrogate their evidence. If we cite a paper, if we cite scientific research, we put it out there. So that is the aspect. So we're so big on transparency in the way we publish our reports, so that if somebody is keen to question it, then they can see what we have done and the processes that we have followed. Now, who checks the fact checkers? So before you become a fact checker who's verified and who's doing the checking on the platforms, so Facebook, Google, there is the International Fact-Checking Network. It's called the IFCN. So it's a global body where all fact checkers get in, and every year we are verified. The verification means they look at our processes, they pick our reports at random and look at how we did the report. They check our sources of funding so that we are not being funded, we are not getting funding to push a certain agenda. They look at whether, so our job is to put some honesty into public debate. So the IFCN would look at, are we partisan? Are we so much against? Are we checking one side of the political divide so much? Are we sort of trying to push one side away? So that is the kind. So they have all these criteria on the transparency of the methodology, our non-partisanship, our independence, our sources, the transparency on the sources of funding, and we have to declare this on our website. So that if somebody is visiting our website, they see how much we got from funder A, how much we got from funder B. And because we understand fact checking is big business. I was reading an article which says truth is expensive, but lies are free. So they were just looking at the good information where newsrooms and newspapers, credible organizations were erecting firewalls. Now, with fact-checking, as at Africa Check, our work goes out and we try to make it accessible because we understand false information travels far and wide quickly. And so to counter that, we also try to be reasonably fast to respond to this information. And the algorithms on the platforms have made it easier for us. So if somebody saw false information and they shared it, when we check it and we find that it is false, then the algorithms alert them that, hey, there is this new information that has been checked. It's been found to be false. You had shared it. Can you have a look? Yeah. So the aspect of censorship, it's not that we take down false information. We don't. That's the platforms decide whether they're going to take it down or not. But the circulation, the algorithms kick in and decide that the false information has to be dropped down. We do not go out there to look for false information. People report these on the platforms. And then once they report the algorithmic signals on the platforms, which push content that is likely to be false to the fact checkers. And then the fact checkers look at that and check for accuracy. If they find it true, well and good. They say it's true. This is backed by evidence. If they find it's not backed by evidence, they say it's not backed by evidence.
And they finish it at that.
Yes, and they finish it at that. So the platforms come in and they warn readers. So if we check something and you want to share false information or you want to read, the platform will tell you, this has been checked and found to be false. Do you still want to share it?
Still want to continue doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Alphonse Chiundu, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us. Asante sana for everything that you've done. And then thank you also to Robert Alai, who is a Kenyan blogger, entrepreneur, cyber activist. Robert, it's you who has some jogo near you.
Yeah.
The jogo, we want to thank you and the jogo for speaking to us this morning.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm in the village. I'm trying to encourage Kenyans who are jobless in the city. Please don't despair in the city. Don't be jobless. Don't commit suicide. I've seen a lot of depressing mental health issues because of COVID-19. Please come to the village. If you have a small shamba, grow the maize, grow sugarcane, grow cotton, whatever. Try to find something you can do in the village.
That's great advice.
Healthy.
That's great. That's great. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for speaking to us, and we wish you a great day.
Thanks, Ladi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you can send someone to go and grow sugarcane.
I can.
In the village.
Sugarcane, unfortunately, takes a bit of time to harvest.
And that's not fake news.
No, that is actually not fake news. Yes. Perhaps you should try something a little easier to
Tomatoes, maybe.
Yeah.
Vegetables.
Yeah.
You can actually eat them.
There's the other angle to this where we are talking about fake news, and at an individual level then, how do you fact check?
Do you want to fact
check? We should learn to be cynical. I think that's the basic.
Being cynical doesn't mean that you're fact checking. It just means that you're encouraging a bias that you have.
No, okay. I don't know whether then that's the wrong word. It's don't just trust it because you've seen it.
True.
I guess over the years of sitting at a news desk, the first thing that I hear is, I'm like, really?
It's a good attitude to have.
So, yeah, every
you
time
take
you say
everything
something
with
like,
a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
And I think that's because you've been trained to do that.
You see, you at least are taking it. I don't take it at all. So the pinch or the salt doesn't come in. No, it doesn't come in.
There's absolutely no space for...
No, you convince me.
Well, I think it is a reality that people's reality or people's experience then contributes to how they're going to behave, especially when they hear something different. You can imagine the person who's been doing something a certain way for the longest time, and it has yielded results for them. And then they hear something out there in the public sphere that resonates with that thing that they've been practicing. There's no way that you're going to tell them that that piece of information is wrong. Because the information it resonates with the experience.
Yeah.
You can be there with your fake news for as long as you want. But for them, it's a reality and it is true.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, you receive an information saying this is forwarded by my cousin who's a doctor.
You know, the truth of the matter is this. Most of us are not wired, trained, or inducted into understanding that truth can be relative. Simple. Meaning, just because this is true, it doesn't mean that anything else that you will hear is untrue.
It's untrue.
No.
True.
Now, simple fact. Simple fact.
Coming up to the top of the hour, remind us today's proverb, CT.
Today's proverb, no matter how tall a tree might grow, it will shed its leaves on the ground.
Okay.
Won't shed it anywhere else. On the ground.
Ground. Kwa ground of it is quite different.
Is quite different. The truth will, is it up or out?
Okay. Keep it right here. This is a Situation Room, broadcasting on radio as well as on digital platforms. Next hour, let's talk about the human cost of the drug beast in the coast of Kenya. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic.
Okay, let's take a look at the roads. On Mombasa Road, we know that it's actually behaving extremely well today, where we see, and it's interesting because it's a trend now, every Friday or so we're going to see traffic outbound on Thika Road, outbound on Waiyaki Way, outbound on Limuru Road, and that's what we're seeing this morning. And we see quite the traffic situation then in Kijabe and Limuru this morning. City's having a moment, traffic is not. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start
2
your
minutes
day.
after 9. Thank you very much for keeping it here. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. In Nairobi, 94.4. In Nakuru, 96.0. Eldoret, 96.7. If you're in, where are we now? Kisumu, 102.5. Nyeri, 90.9. Let's go to the coast. On the coast, Kilifi, all the way to Malindi, 97.7. Malindi, crossing over into the south coast, 87.9. And that's where we want to anchor our conversation in the next hour. Now we want to talk about the drug menace in the coast. This is not an issue that has, just reared its ugly head now. It's been there for a while. The issue of drug trafficking, the convenient location of Kenya as a drug transit hub, and then the same drug now ending up in the local market. And then we've seen the communities that have come up to raise issues because they are people, young men and women, even going to an era of older men and women who have now gotten hooked up into this drug issue.
Literally.
Completely. Hooked into drug. And now the human cost of this beast in the coast is what we want to discuss. And we'll be speaking with Nazra Omar. She is a digital curator, researcher on all these matters and communication. And Nazra is on the line. Good morning, Nazra.
Morning. How are you?
Well, thank you. And thank you very much for speaking to us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Nazra, recently Kenya has been getting a lot of international attention when it comes to drug trafficking, especially Mombasa, right? We even know the case of the Akashas who are now, in prison in the USA. What's the situation on the ground? Like, contextualize this, the spread, the impact of the drug menace.
Well, that's the thing. Right now, it's internationally, but it's a problem that we've been facing for a while. We can say decades of this. whereby Mombasa being a key port in East Africa, and the best and fastest way to transport drugs without being caught is through the ocean, because who's going to police that entire space? So we have been having drugs coming in. Now, according to Netflix, this is one of the key hubs when it comes to trafficking. But on the other side, it's also it has been a place that's been abusing drugs for a long time. And unlike places like Mombasa, Nairobi, where the hard drugs, the heroin, cocaine, you'll mostly find it amongst the affluent people. In places like the coast, it's with the youth who, some of them have nothing. And I know people say Mombasa and coast Mombasa. So when we say when we talk about the coast, people only think this problem is in Mombasa. But technically, this thing is in the belly, in Malindi, it's in Lamu, it's everywhere. The drug menace is everywhere.
When you say the drug menace is everywhere, if I may ask, and thank you very much for coming to the show, what specific drugs do we see the consumers at the coast consuming?
So it depends. We're seeing heroin. We're seeing hard drugs. Heroin, the local name for the bungizi. We're seeing bangi, which bangi is everywhere right now in the world. But we have like brown sugar. We have, can I say all the nasty stuff? The stuff that gets you addicted for life and you can't let go. That's what's holding the coast right now.
That was phase one of my question. Phase two, if you mentioned Netflix as a source. Now, if we were to go by what one sees in the movies or one gets the impression that there's a very direct correlation between drug use and gangs. Have we seen this correlation at the coast?
Hey, where do we even start? It's there. It's okay. When we see Netflix, we see Narcos, or we see shows, we see news from Mexico and people being beheaded, or all these things. From that side, we can see that those places are where drugs are made. This is where the opium is and all these things. Now, when you come to our side, the impacts of the gangs is on a smaller scale, but it's still there. So I'll give you an example of my village. It's an island in Lamu, Pate. It's a small village. It's called Chundwa. We have people with machetes. People with machetes, pangas, cutting each other up because of either conflicts when it comes to drug abuse conflicts, or you have people who are trying to maintain their turfs. So if you read the news, the chiefs are being hacked to death. Assistant chiefs in broad daylight are being hacked to death. People are losing their fingers because kunawatu, they sharpen their panga so much that when they slice you once, all your fingers drop off from your hands. And these are all a way to protect their turfs. These are ways to instill fear in the community and the like. So yes, there is a relation to gangs and drugs. In Mombasa, we are seeing the same thing with different names of gangs coming up, killing each other, killing the community, terrorizing the community. Because now, when it comes to a place that has trafficking and abuse, you have gangs that come up to be able to sustain their needs, to sustain the heroin is expensive, all this brown sugar is expensive. So you have people cutting each other up, hacking people, going to other people's houses just so as to maintain their abuse and to maintain the channels of trafficking.
We're seeing that this affects a lot of young boys and men, specifically so. Why do you think this is? Whether they are running these cartels, as it were, or addicted to the drugs, why is it that it's affected young men and boys more than women and girls?
So we can see that the people who are outside are the men. Drugs is outside. Drugs are rarely in the home. They're shot up in alleyways. They're where people interact. And with a unique situation in the coast, you'll see most women are indoors, girls are not outside as much. So the first people who would be addicted would be the boys. The people who you can lure in are the boys. The people who are transporting the drugs, the mules, all these are the boys. Though I'm not saying that there are no women in this or there are no female drug addicts, there are no female drug traffickers. One of the biggest drug traffickers in Mombasa is said to be a woman, apparently. So the boys, it's because they're outside. The girls are cocooned. The girls are saved, and we tend to be more of a protective of our girls. So ukimwona mwenzako msichana anatoka usiku, you're not going to let her be out. But a boy will come back at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. He's not going to be asked, where were you, what were you doing? But a girl, by 6 p.m., you should be home. So things like that of protecting the society mainly goes on the girl side, on the female side. Right. So the boys are the most affected.
What kind of implications do you think this is now bearing on these particular communities when you have a lot of the boys being addicted and then running into some of these gangs? What does that mean then for communities, for families?
There are multiple dimensions to this, or multiple levels to this. One, you have a generation of lost boys. If the boys are not addicted to the drugs, meaning rendering them close to useless because they have to keep feeding the high, or they are working in the business, so it's dangerous. You're not seeing them walk as freely as they would. And those who are not addicted have been driven out of the towns. They've been taken to Arabuni. They've been taken to other cities where there's less of a drug menace. So there's like a gap in the entire society of men, of boys. And the ones that are left, there's crime rates are going up. You have people have no one to fend for them because, as they say, they're the ones who go out, who bring in the meat at home. So when they're not there, there's a gap in the household economy. And then you have mothers who, once your boy is caught or you're dealing with a criminal at home, or somebody trying to fund their drug abuse, you end up starting to miss things in the house, or you sell your own things to bail out your son. People are selling their gold. People are selling their possessions to either take their children to rehab or to get their kids out of jail. So those are some of the things that we're starting to see. And on a positive but not so positive side, now women have had to step up. You're seeing young girls stepping up because there's nobody else who's going to do some things for you. So there's more a sort of empowerment that's happening, that responsibilities are shifting in the coast.
Are you saying, Nasra, that there's a leadership crisis?
There is a leadership crisis. I'm not saying the situation is saying so, because and if you look at it, it's the same leaders in some scenarios who are propagating this. They're the ones in the business. For example, what's she called? The women rep of Lamu went on public record to call out one of the Lamu leaders' brother for doing this in Parliament. So there's an aspect of them leading this on or funding this trafficking or protecting the evil people, because we will call them evil. And also there's very little that's being done. The most that people want to do is build a rehabilitation clinic, but it can't stop there, because we're only going to save a couple of people, but there's a lot more implications in the society.
Do I understand you to say that there is a relationship between this drug trade and politics?
Yeah. It's the only thing that's keeping it alive. If we had good governance, it wouldn't be there. And if you look around the world, it's the places where there is no politics, or there's no system of governance, or there's loopholes in the governance, where you see it thriving more. Because these are the people who you bribe to get your drugs through. These are the people you bribe to get your people out of jail. These are the people who create systems or gaps in the routes for trafficking. So the cops are asleep at a certain point, and you work around it. So yeah, it is them. There's a scenario that was written in the papers that ambulances and police escorts are being used to traffic drugs in the city. So there is a relation between the governance and the drug abuse problem and the trafficking.
Is there an outcry from the community, from families? Is there an outcry to say that this is what we are seeing? It's affecting communities socially. It's already affecting leadership issues. Has it reached the ears of the powers that be?
There's been an outcry for a while, but if the people are benefiting from it, the people at the top, obviously, no matter how loud you shout, they will close their ears. And if you shout too much, they will silence you. So the situation is dire, and it's only going to get worse. We'll have over 40,000 heroin addicts in the coast right now. And I'm sure that number is way more because these are statistics from a long time ago. So seeing a lost generation and the next generation is coming up, and we're seeing the same trends going on at a much higher scale. There has been an outcry, but deaf ears.
What kind of outcry is there? Is it organized? Is it reaching out to the authorities and saying and demanding answers or demanding action? Is there follow through?
Right now, I would say the outcry, because we know the way the situation works. We know how the systems right now are not the best for us. So the outcry is active action with the drug addicts, with the drug abusers, and trying to at least save them. So like in Mombasa, you have Mewa. They have a methadone program trying to wean people off heroin. You have people like Omari Project in Malindi who are doing something about it. Also trying to rehabilitate people, and the people who are in the staff are recovering drug addicts. But when it comes to the drug trafficking, because you see, we can stop as many users as we can, but they always get more. The market will never die. When it comes to drug trafficking, there is not much of a concerted effort. We know. We've seen Pablo Escobar and all these things. We see how deep it gets into the society, how deep these systems are. If people can escape from jail in the Americas because of this, what about our systems here? Like, no, I don't think there would be much would be done if the system of governance continues as is.
But we've seen action being taken by government on several fronts. For example, there's an outcry from the community. There's a reshuffle of the administrative officers and police officers. We've seen the CS for Interior, Fred Matiang'i, flying all the way to the coast, holding a meeting and saying, you know what, I have moved all the officers here because of the outcry from the community. Why does that never work?
I'll give you an example. Because we just do it for the show most of the time. We know how it works. I'll give you an example of Chundwa, where I told you there was a drug problem. It's a big drug problem in the whole island. It's one of the villages with the most addicts and where the drug trade flourishes. The cops that are sent there, and we know to service the area, are actually people who are sent as a punishment, whereby you have misbehaved as a disciplinary action. You've misbehaved somewhere else. So you know what? We're going to send you in the hardest place to live with the most difficult people. So if you're sending people in one of the drug dens or one of these worst affected areas, and the people you're sending in are the ones who are indisciplined, how are you going to solve the drug menace? So it's scenarios like that. Matiang'i would fly in, he would hold speeches, but the systems on the ground are not being designed to solve this. That's the issue. And even when the locals do it themselves, they're being killed.
Let me ask this question. I want to come back to Mombasa town because at the coast, Mombasa is our biggest town. Where in Mombasa would you say you could identify, say, the biggest drug problem? Which part of Mombasa?
I'd say Kisauni.
You'd say
Kisauni
Kisauni
is having Kisauni, Old Town also was having a big problem, but Kisauni is one of the worst hit places.
Okay, let me ask a more direct question. Has the county government done anything to try and help alleviate this problem, which is clearly a menace?
The person alleviating this problem in Mombasa right now is Mewa. Mewa is the one, the hospital is doing as much as they can. The county government, no. I don't know. Or if they are doing something, it's not loud enough for me to vouch for.
Do they know that there's a problem?
Pardon?
Does the county government know that there is a problem?
Mm-hmm.
Are they aware?
How can you know?
Well, if it's a reason that may be given, that's what I'm asking. Has this problem been presented to them and said, look, this is what is going on within this county? This is what we see as what's happening.
Yeah, if it was a secret thing, we would say they're not aware. But it's a public outcry on what he called Muhammad Ali, the MP for Nyali. If we were to say, okay, they don't know, he's been shouting it from the rooftops. So they do know. He's the MP for Nyali. They do know. And he says it himself that that's the one issue Mombasa is silent about, the Mombasa County. The people in power.
Does somebody benefit then from being silent about this? Why would they be silent about something that's affecting, what's that number you gave? 40,000 people addicted, 40,000 people going through a system, having to go to hospital, having to get some kind of psychosocial care. This is just heroin. We've not talked about other drugs, right? 40,000 is not a small number when we're looking at this. So what would be the reason why a county government would be silent over a problem that is shouting right now?
There's some pockets that are lining. There's some pockets that are filling up from this. There are people, the only reason which would make sense why people would be silent is that they're benefiting. That's the only justifiable cause. Because there's not even any much action to get rid of it that much, because everything else looks like funfair. So there are people, not one, not two, not three. There are a couple of people benefiting from this business. And in all arms, from law, from the judiciary system to the law enforcement officers, everywhere there is somebody benefiting somewhere, and that's making sure this thing is flourishing as is.
I'm sure the county government would obviously be running some programs here and there, or even supporting organizations like MEWA. Even the national government, knowing that this is a menace that is all over the country. Organs of the national government like NACADA must have offices in Mombasa that are dealing with addressing the issue of alcohol and substance abuse. So is it that you're saying you have not encountered them, or are you saying that you have actually conducted your research and not found any action that's being taken by the two levels of government?
No, the national government is taking action. That's for sure. And MEWA does work with NACADA in this. So because they can't really work alone. But when it comes to the trafficking and all that, that's where the issue is the most. And I'll stand corrected. Somebody would come in with better facts, and this is why we're here. But there is some level of trying to solve this. We are seeing a few people being caught, a few people going to jail for this. Most of the time, it's the low level drug traffickers. Yeah. It's the mules who are going to jail. But we want to see more akashas, because that's where the drug is stopped, and they're known. So if we take Ali, Umari, and Juma to jail, and they are just peddling less than a kilo or something like that, what about the big guys who are bringing these things in containers? That's where the problem is. And they have done something. Let me say that, like when they blew up the ship in the ocean. But at the same time, still, because there's a level of distrust with the government, and the coast has been marginalized for a while, the coast has faced trust issues with the government. even the ship, some people would say that they don't believe that there were drugs in there, that ni unga peke yake. Though they could have genuinely blown up all the drugs that they caught. But the level of distrust, so even when you go look for information in research to find out what's being done, there's such a negative vibe between the people and the government. So you would hear the good that the government is doing. Like right now, just what's happened with me. I'll just tell you what's the bad that they have done. So maybe we should have like a panelist from the government who's been active doing this and give us the facts and the stats of how they have handled this. But going even by the Netflix show, for example, they say it's not a big problem. It's fine. We have everything under control. But the people on the ground will tell you, no, this is a nightmare. Like, what are we doing? Yeah.
You know, you mentioned that there's an entire generation that is being lost. The question I want to ask is, what would you say are the catalysts? What are the things that propel young people, not just into taking drugs, but into getting involved in this trade? What is it?
It's quick money. It's a really, really good money. Like the amount you turn over, it's worth it. And you see, when you look at your partners or your friends who are in the business and they're living a good life because of this money, that's one of the biggest allures to it. So if just to ship something from point A to point B, I get $500,000. Just one risk, and even 50,000 can change somebody's life. So people are ready to risk it all because also they have very little to lose. Now you're in a situation where it's dire. There are no job opportunities. Everything is taken up by if you know somebody and things like that. So whatever opportunity you get, you go for it. But yeah, you end up endangering your life. You end up endangering your family. But it's worth the risk, according to them, at that particular point, based on the situation on the ground.
So are you saying
that is why?
Do I hear you to say that there is perhaps a gap in the skill availability among the young people? There is an absence of adequate training facilities. What is it? Because unemployment among the youth is rampant in the country, yes, but what we're discussing here is a very extreme form of risk-taking.
You're right. There's unemployment everywhere, and what you see in a place like Mombasa, it's a city, and we all believe cities are supposed to have everything, but I would want to say it's historical. People feel like there's been an historical injustice, and people are carrying historical baggage of the situation. So there are some certain types of jobs for certain communities they wouldn't do. They'd be like, there's no way I'm gonna go like sweep a road. There's no way I'm gonna sell vegetables. There's no way I'm gonna go farm. There's actually such perceptions. So they would rather sit somewhere and wait for an opportunity which matches up with their papers because they have gone to school and matches up with how much they value themselves and what they are capable of. And then when you check, you stay 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 4 months waiting. What's the next thing you're going to do? Pastime, or find a quick way to make a quick buck. And then now that's what ends up happening. So in as much as yes, there are some certain services that are available in the coast, though in certain regions they're not there. Some people want certain opportunities in a certain way, and if they can't get them, they will wait till that opportunity comes.
The lack of opportunities, I think it resonates in terms of the youth, finished education, looking for opportunity, you not see that opportunity, and there's a way in which you are trained that the opportunity will come dressed in this particular form, and then you don't see that dressed opportunity coming your way, you get disenfranchised. We see it in other areas as well. I mean, when you talk about alcoholism in other parts of the country, when you talk about people moving into miraa in some parts of the country, or smoking bang in other parts of the country, and then there's drugs in the coast. So we are talking about access now to drugs in the coast? What is it that facilitates that easy access of this particular illicit commodity in this particular region? Because it must be so cheap that somebody who's jobless can still afford it.
You just need to look at the price of fuel in the coast and in Nairobi. The price of fuel in the coast is cheaper. Why? Because that's the point of entry. So this is where most of it comes in. So even if it's destined to other places, for example, it's going to other parts of the world, but it means some can be taken out for the community there, for example. And these are the people some of them are helping with the trafficking. Some of the barons are there, some of the barons are based there. So you take out a few, give it to the people there, and voila, you have it. And on the point where you guys were asking on why is it that it's in the coast, I think we're at a second stage where it's not about not having opportunities anymore. It's beyond that, is that there's so many people using. It's like a pyramid scheme. Now you can get even more people. It's those first 10, 20, 100 people, which is difficult to get. And then now for every two people, like one person you have, he's going to get a few more. And after that, you get more and more and more. So then now you're able to hook people earlier, faster, and at a more wider scale.
We're speaking with Nasra Omar Bwana. She's a digital curator, researcher, works very much in the coast, and especially documenting the life and times and the cultures of the coastal peoples, particularly the Swahili. And she's giving us experiences from the coast and the issue of drug, the human cost of the drug menace in the coast. 9:30. Let's take a break, take a look at weather and traffic, and then we continue this conversation. We'll open up the phone lines, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Let's move now into the solution part. What needs to happen to curb the drug menace in the coast? What needs to happen to curb the drug menace in Mombasa, in Kilifi, in all the way up to Lamu? And even the small villages in Lamu as well have also been affected. Something must be done. What is it that must be done, and by whom? Good morning. Let's take a look at traffic and weather.
Mellow Spice.
All right, still quite overcast in certain parts of Nairobi this morning. We're likely to see that there will be a sprinkle later on. Currently at 18 degrees, partly cloudy conditions through most parts of today. 16 degrees and partly cloudy in Nakuru as well. Looking into Eldoret, we're likely to see rains in the afternoon. It's overcast at 15 degrees. And in Kisumu, partly cloudy at 21 degrees and a chance of rain there as well. Kakamega is going to follow suit. Currently cloudy and overcast at 18 degrees, going to a high of 26 today. In Mombasa, it's partly cloudy at 23. We'll go to a high of 31 as well. Let's look outside of Kenya, where in Kampala at 25 degrees, we'll see it going to highs of 28 and partly cloudy conditions. Dar es Salaam is going to be partly cloudy for most of the day, going to a high of 32. And in South Africa, in Johannesburg, going to a high of 18 and coming to lows of 4. It's still pretty chilly this morning at 6. And in Nigeria, in Lagos, it's partly cloudy at 26 degrees. A chance of rain going into the weekend, reaching a high of 32 today. We'll look then into Europe as a last lap now, and still the summer months, but rainy days in Paris, going to a high then today of 32 and with warm weather. And also in London, going to a high of 31 today. There's a chance of rain. And finally in New York, peaking into Friday, partly cloudy conditions. They're waking up to a sprinkle today, likely to experience thunderstorms through most parts of the weekend. Look like now hasn't really changed much. Traffic has been very good this morning, not much of drama as we had seen early in the week. It is Friday, so just outside here on Mombasa Road, unfortunately there's been an accident, and a matatu is carrying excess passengers. It is quite dangerous, guys. We need to be careful about that. Just when we thought we were going to have an accident and incident free Friday on Mombasa Road, unfortunately that did not happen. Okay. So now let's look outside of the city, where we see some movement headed in the Kijabe direction. that traffic jam is still there. So it's going to have to be waited out for a bit. We'll talk about this much later in the day and see how traffic has behaved. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4
The
Spice
question is,
FM.
what needs to happen to end the drug menace in the coast of the Republic of Kenya? In fact, let's just say in Kenya, but okay, no. Let's ask about coast specifically, all right?
Well, talking about the drug menace, I mean, this is a uniquely troublesome scenario that we're talking about here, because when you hear of a lost generation, communities depend on their youth to carry on traditions and to ensure that there's continuity.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a situation where the people who are to be relied on to do this are fallen prey to a menace such as this one here, this goes beyond a lost generation. It's a decimation of a generation. Let me ask my question. Given what you know and given what you've understood, I mean, there have been accusations about politicians being involved in the drug trade. There have been accusations about government officials like commissioners getting involved in the drug trade. The question I'm asking is not whether it's true or not, but do people believe it to be true?
Yeah, because this comes from the people. It's the people who say this. It's not in reports. So the people do believe it's true. And they do. They do, but you will have doubters. It's a mix of both. So some people believe it when watasema wamesingiziwa, that this is just fabricated stories, especially if this is somebody you love or if you're a diehard fan of this person. But where there's smoke, there's fire.
And this particular smoke, where do you think it comes from? Because it's not every leader towards whom fingers are pointed. There are specific individuals they'll mention. Why?
Because you don't work in a bubble. It's an industry. You don't work alone. So at some point, somebody somewhere will open their mouth. And you just need one person to have a doubt or to open their mouth and connect just a few dots, and you're done. Or you're almost done, because clearly, if these people are still in the business, they're not done yet.
So why is it that the community cannot take action? I mean, there's clearly an organized system here that is ensuring the drugs arrive at the Kenyan coast and supplies the drugs into the smallest unit, the cheapest unit that can be afforded by everybody. Why can't the community act and break this up? Is it so secretive?
When you're dealing first with your own son at home, you're already struggling with yourself and the impact that this has in your household or in your immediate family. So first, let me sort that out, and then let me go for the big guys. And also because it's a dangerous thing. And if we can't stop in Kenya, if we haven't been able to stop corruption, as long as pockets are being lined with something, it's very hard to take it down. As long as somebody is benefiting.
So then what needs to happen? Because it seems as if we've established the problem. We know that this is what the issue is. We know that there are tens of thousands of young people who are being affected. On the other hand, it is clear that, as you say, government is not doing anything about it, whereas they have the information. It seems to me that something has got to give. It's either that there will be action taken by communities if they are not happy with the status quo, or there's going to be a push for government to do something, but it's going to burst at the seams at some point. You're going to have communities that then unfortunately will be rendered useless by virtue of the fact that it's affecting young men and boys, all right? Or you're going to have more and more and more and more affected as you go along. So to me, it sounds like if you've seen that the government is not taking action whereby they need to, then there must be some kind of community action, outspoken, right out. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem. We're going to talk about it in another few months. We're going to talk about it some months after that. So it seems to me that at this point in time, the people most affected need to be the ones to now start agitating in a louder voice. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, it's true. You can't expect people to come solve your problem. The very first step would be to shout, and this is what's happening. That's why we're talking about this, because people are shouting somewhere. But what I believe is the most important thing to do is mitigate the human cost of it. It's not something which we will end in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. This is something, all the solutions are aimed at 20 years from now. So at the very least, the society can do, the communities we can do, is protect these people who are being born now, who are 1 to under 10 years old. First of all, start safeguarding that section of the population.
How?
And then as we deal with the other people, but at least break the curse.
How do you do this?
Yeah.
That's the... We are able to, I'll use this word, indoctrinate in a way, or protect or save. If the girls have been kept away from this, the girls are not in this. Something is being done in the way those girls are being raised.
Okay.
To avoid them getting into that, into the drugs and all that, and into the market. So now start applying those systems. Maybe that's one of the solutions, and use it on the boys. Be more responsible. Teach them about this, and not let them fend for themselves for a while. And just groom a society in the schools, in the class, not just singing songs which are irrelevant. Draw examples. Do all these things to change their mindset.
So
and make them believe in one thing.
You're talking about changing some things, some cultural approaches to parenting. Because like you're saying, there's a way that girls are brought up and there's a way that boys are brought up. There's the very much in strict hand-holding of the girl child, and there's a bit of freedom in the upbringing of the boy child. So you're saying that we should apply some level of strictness with the boy child as well, while at the same time...
I'll call it care. I won't call it... it's strictness, but it's care. And most people do it out of knowing the implications of having a girl and the dangers that are out there in the world for the girl. That's where that strictness comes from. It's out of care most of the time, or some of the time. So also giving that same care to the boys. And also it comes with, I'll say, responsibility. Girls are made responsible for their actions, for what they do, for the household. She's the one who will take away your cup when you finish your tea. You instill a sense of responsibility for their actions from a very young age. So they're able to start making decisions based on their needs and based on the needs of the people around them. That's how we train. We're being trained in a way without realizing it. So it's the same. You need to, and the boy knows he's only responsible for himself and what he needs to do. So his actions are to make him happy. But a girl is brought up with shame and responsibility that you are responsible for the whole community. What you do reflects on everybody and all these things. And it ends up giving them morals in a way, or it has its bad side to it, but there's also that good side of it, where it's beneficial in terms of girls police themselves. And how attacking, they don't want to find themselves in the wrong place. And even if they want to, there's a lot that happens.
There's an implication to it. I mean, you do this and the other, you're bringing shame to the family. You're bringing shame to the clan. That's right. Just take you back to, you are giving us your example of your own village. Just remind me the name of the village again.
Chundwa village.
Chundwa village in Lamu.
No. Please inform Eric which island it's on, because Eric seems to think Lamu is just one big piece of land. You need to explain it to him.
It's an island.
So So yeah, Chundwa, Lamu has so many islands.
Right.
Like, it's an archipelago. And Chundwa is on the biggest island, which is not Lamu, ironically. The biggest island is called Pate. And the island has many villages. It has like, I think 9 villages, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so Chundwa is one of the villages on that island.
And you were saying that in Chundwa village, you already have a couple of youth and even older persons who are addicted to drugs.
Yes, or as we say, wanasinzia mabarazani, like they are hooked to this, and they're also it's also a trafficking center.
Okay.
So if you look at Pate, there are a couple of villages which are very active with the drug trade, and Chundwa is one of them. There's another one known as Bojumwali. And it's funny when I meet like an OCS or somebody who's interacted with the community, and you tell them you're from there, they're like, hey. There, are you sure you're safe? Because of how rampant the drug abuse is. But also at the same time, you can't really tell unless you've lived there for a while.
Oh, it's not of that. You actually would visit the place and you would not know what's happening.
Yeah. So like last year, we had people come over onto the village for, I would call it a mini festival. And a lot of care was taken security-wise. It was quiet. And now when you tell people about the situation there, they're like, this is impossible. This was the most peaceful village I have ever seen.
Yep.
But it's under the belly.
So the community in Chundwa knows that there's a drug problem. All right.
Yeah.
In the last, let's say 1 year, has there been any uprising or demonstration by the community demanding action, identifying that this is a person who is selling drugs here locally, and this is a person who has recruited our young people into the trade?
In the last couple of years, they has. We even had informants and people like that working on this. But you have to remember the gangs. People have been killed. And when I say killed, it's not a shot. You're hacked to death. And they've been hacked to death in other villages like Mbojumali, but it's the same. It's like, it's connected.
Yep.
So it gets to a point where you fear for yourself and you fear for your life. And even beyond hacking, with the same trying to get informants and all this, when you're found out to be an informant, your house, there's arsoning. They light up your roof. And you know, in the coast, it's thatch houses.
Yeah.
So you light up one roof, you are ready to risk the whole village and kill everybody.
Yeah.
So when it gets to that level, you can't really tell people, why aren't you doing anything about it?
So the community has been subdued, basically.
Yeah.
And therefore, it would be unfair to expect that the local community in Chundwa would behave the same way a community in a village in Kiambu would get up one morning and you'd see women demonstrating on the streets, demanding action against alcohol, people who are selling illicit alcohol. Because we see this kind of things in the areas where there's alcohol abuse and there's rampant alcohol abuse, local communities rise up, especially the women, and they will go and identify that this is where this alcohol is coming from, and they demand a closure, and they even pour the alcohol on the streets. You're saying that we cannot expect the same in Chundwa?
If they were doing that, and then somebody the next day comes with you with a panga, I don't think there'll be much. There's a time the noise starts to keep quiet now, because and something like heroin and brown sugar, all these things, the costs are so high. I wouldn't really expect a picketing of some sort. And also you have to think about this, the dynamics, the social dynamics are different, or how voices are heard in different societies. It plays out differently. So a place like, you've given an example, Kiambu, for example, there's a value of importance of that region or a perceived importance to everybody else. In the country, people will say that it's a food basket or something like that. When you come to a place like Chundwa, what is Chundwa giving to the world? Like, if this is a place where you send people for hardship and for discipline, you really don't care what is going to happen to these guys. It's a marginalized area.
So if it was an area...
They do as...
So if it was an area where you say is contributing, I'm going to put contributing in quotes to the country, that you would even find that law enforcement and government, for example, would be involved more?
They would. I mean, see, you have to remember there's a perception of the people of the coast. People of the coast are idiots and people of the coast are lazy. A perception. So you're like, why am I bothering with these people? Like,
no. I think there are two different things. We are talking about action by the people themselves. It doesn't matter what perception everybody else in the bara would have for somebody in a village in Mombasa to rise up and say that we know
This is enough.
This is where this person is the one who's vending drugs. Why can't they rise up and say, this we know, you, Mr. So-and-so, you're the one who's been selling drugs to our youth here?
It does matter because, you see, you have to go to these same offices to you have to work with the police, to get this done. You have to work with like in Nairobi.
No, maybe not. Just rise up as a community and go there and take action against your own neighbor.
No.
First of all, something like heroin, somebody just doesn't keep it, like alcohol, somewhere where you just go and you open up and it's there. These things are hidden, and you can't just go and say you're the one. Prove it. Prove I'm the one selling this heroin. Where is it? And if you don't have evidence, if you don't have proof, and they're saying, this one, Hanitaki Mazuri, next day you're being hacked. What do?
Actually, also, there's a little point about these are islands. Now, policing a landmass like say Kiambu and policing many islands is also very, very difficult. Number one. Number two.
Chundo is one example. Mombasa.
No, not Mombasa. I'm talking about Lamu. I'm talking about Lamu. There are many islands. And then there's a huge coastline. The question I would ask is, in all honesty, do we have the wherewithal or the interest to actually police our coastline? Because it's massive and it's porous.
With something like it's the best way to do it is through intelligence, because it's massive, but there are very few people. So if you have created the right system of intelligence, you will get it, and people know. So they can manage to at least. You just need to get rid of 2-3, at least start creating fear, and they have been doing something. Let me just clarify. There has been action towards it, but it's yet to be enough. And the action, actually, you're asking what the community is doing.
Yep.
The action that's been achieved so far, it's because of the community participation. It's because the community has said, we've had enough. But the community can only go so far. If you take this person to jail, the next day they are roaming free because watu wametoa kitu kidogo ama kitu kingi. And the cops have made this a business in that area. So no matter what we do, take 200 people into the jail cells, take people into rehab, fund everything, there's somebody somewhere benefiting. And they will take the person out and put them back into the society and protect them on top of that. So the solution isn't just with get rid of the drug dealers, get rid of the drug traffickers. It's also get rid of the rot in the system, because those two are thriving together.
Is it possible? From where you're sitting now and from what you've seen and what you've experienced.
You tell me. No, you have to tell me, because this is around the world.
Hold on.
Kenya.
From where you are, from where you've sat, from all the information that you've been able to gather over time, from what your sentiment is at this moment, is it possible for what you've just said to happen? To get rid of the rot in the system, to get traffickers off of the streets, to rehabilitate those who've been hooked on drugs for years. Is it possible to clean it up from where you sit?
It's possible to not clean it up completely, but it's possible to mitigate the cost of it. It's possible to reduce the impact. And we've seen it. We've seen it in the past year. A lot has been done on the ground, and there is a certain amount of change. It could have been way more if the systems were working, but there is change. The drug addicts, the drug abusers are coming in and being like, you know what, I'm affected by this.
Yeah.
I really want out. I'm tired. I'm tired, and I'm ready to help you however you want. So it's not a hopeless dire. It's a dire situation, but it's not hopeless. But we have to create the systems with a goal of like 10, 20 years from now, because this didn't start yesterday. This started 10, 20 years ago. And we have to undo all that and still save sort out the problems that we're dealing with, lack of infrastructure and all these other things. So on top of just the drugs, we have another problem of people, no schools, no hospitals, all these things. So yeah.
Work and a lot of work to be done. Nasra Omar Bwana, thank you very much for speaking to us. Nasra is a digital content curator and also a researcher, and you're doing a lot of work in the course. Just tell us a bit of what you do as we say goodbye.
So as I say goodbye, you're making me sad. I'm going to cry. It's been nice sitting down with the three of you. Right now, a lot of our focus is on identity. So I'm working with Historia, which focuses on the history and culture of the coast and connecting the present to the past. So understanding who the people are, what they were and what they are now, so that in the future, people have a story to see where they came from. Because even as we talk about this drug menace that's there, a part of it comes from an identity crisis of people not feeling they are worthy or people not knowing who they are. So the moment you give somebody pride and understanding of who they are and their possibilities of their generations before them, what they achieved and what they could achieve, we're hoping that it will have a positive impact on it. So we're just researching on things that were happening in the past and understanding what's happening now, basically.
Some good work there you're doing. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
You too. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
As we come to the conclusion of this show, I mean, the issue of drugs, like she's saying, yes, it's systemic. And it has crept in slowly over a number of years. I mean, people have... The story started. It was just a hub. Trafficking, bring it here, store it for a bit, break it down into smaller units. It wasn't something
that was touching the community.
It wasn't
directly.
touching the community.
Directly, yes.
And then somebody just started bringing it into the community over time, and now here we are. And over time, there have been, people that are saying, let's address this menace. Let's identify who the main culprits are. But it seems not to move.
No. And that is why the question of not just the interest, but the personalities involved, who must they be? Because this is a problem that everyone acknowledges is a problem.
It's a problem.
The government knows it's a huge problem. And it's actually latched on to the one demographic that is actually fundamental to any development of a community. If you look at the problem of alcohol, why it raises such an issue is because it also attaches itself to a similar demographic. And you could look and see, my goodness.
Could see what was happening.
Because
there
it's
are
not
trends.
Yes, it's not just these people. It's like the future is lost there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then you look at the coastline that we have. It's 1,420 kilometers. That's that coastline. It's like the distance from Mombasa to Kigali. Okay. Now, it's not that the coast doesn't have resources. It does. So it takes us back to that age-old question: management. And leadership. Yes.
And then further to that, implementation, where it always seems to be the problem.
Lamu is 3 times the size of Kiambu. Okay. But Kiambu has 15 times the number of people in Lamu. So you could argue that managing a place like Kiambu is more difficult because there are more people. Now, if resources were actually applied to managing a problem in a place like that, that sparse population in itself could be an advantage because you know the number of people you're dealing with.
Yep. It's a goodwill. It's a political goodwill to address this. And it's because we, the people, have elected some of these people who are not clean into positions of political power and then expecting them to stop themselves.
Sanitize.
And those in the leadership in the community who over time have risen, instead of also rising up to the occasion and saying this is wrong, they join that bandwagon. And by so doing, they condemn their communities and the communities
Even
from
further.
which they came. Yes.
To uselessness.
Yes.
This is it.
Conclude the week for us, City. We'll go with today's proverb.
Got to breathe out on that one.
No. This one touches the soul. No matter how tall a tree might grow, it will shed its leaves on the ground. With reference to people who are involved in these nefarious activities, the day of reckoning is nigh.
They'll fall to the ground.
It doesn't matter what you think you've done, how much money you've made, how rich you become. That day of reckoning will come.
But the sad part is, as their day of reckoning comes, an entire generation will have been lost.
Completely.
That's the sad part. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room this week, Monday to Friday. Join us again next week, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And now, Nduoko will say goodbye.
Goodbye and have a good weekend. And don't forget to stay safe. There are ways you can do it. Wash your hands, maintain social distance, and put on your mask. You can do it. And I'll see you next week. And the conversation continues.
Just some more.
What do you want me to say?
Eric, just keep conducting that invisible choir.
Yeah. I mean, say something else. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good day. It's now 10 o'clock.
Spice
Spice up your life